Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series 2021. Of course, it is Season 2, and we are here today with the broadcast for round number 4 of the 8-round series. Now, as you can see here, our times tonight in British Summer Time or UTC +1 for the schedule of tonight's racing is as follows. At 7:25, we'll be getting underway with the driver's briefing. At 7:30, we'll be getting underway with the 15-minute qualifying session to determine who will be on pole. And then we'll be going straight into the race after that at 7:45, the 75-minute feature race in order to see who is going to be the winner of round number 4. And then at 9 o'clock or just after 9 o'clock, we'll be bringing you those post-race podium interviews with our top 3 finishers. In the commentary box, you've got myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, of course, also known as Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And remember, you can watch this broadcast tonight on 3 different media platforms. Firstly, on the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, that's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, on Facebook, if you look at Facebook groups, you can find us at NXTGEN Racing on Facebook groups. And last but not least, as you can see the link there in the commentary team slot, also on my personal Twitch channel at TX141 on Twitch. Now, many of you may immediately be going, well, hold on a second, we weren't meant to be having a broadcast today, it was meant to be on Friday because you weren't going to be available for it, Paul. Well, it turns out that due to a little bit of trickery and certain circumstances and stars aligning, that we're able to bring you the racing live tonight. So as a result, we're not going to be having a post-race broadcast for round number 4. You are getting this live as it happens tonight, and indeed, our drivers will be taking it to the circuit, which will introduce the circuit in a short period of time, and you can expect some fantastic race action tonight. If the first 3 rounds have been anything to go by, round number 4 is only going to up the ante ever more. Now, of course, before we come on to the racing itself, it's only appropriate that we introduce our senior partners, without whom it's not possible to run this series. And of course, we have 2 senior partners working with us. The fact that we're hosting this on the Assetto Corsa Competizione PC platform itself is a special nod to Kuno Simulation, but also we have the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy working with us in order to bring you this series. So without further ado, let's introduce them, starting with the SimGrid. So the SimGrid, who are they and what do they stand for? Well, the SimGrid is a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competizione, and also recently they've also moved over to the platform known as R-Factor 2. But we're focused on Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PC, of course, and if you do want to find community-led races, community-led series, whether it's professional or amateur series, the SimGrid is the place to go to. Meanwhile, we have also Coach Dave Academy, which is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Indeed, sponsored by the legendary man, I believe, set up by the legendary South African driver David Perel himself, and he has a wonderful team alongside him. Coach Dave Academy is the place that you want to go to if you want to be able to find the extra second or extra tenth of a second, or just find a way of setting the car more to your liking. And we're very grateful to have both of them on board. Firstly, Coach Dave Academy for the fact that they are providing us with a good number of prizes within our prize pool for our drivers over the course of this season. A good number of setups up for grabs from Coach Dave Academy, also known as CDA setups. And with the SimGrid, we have some of the very best stewards out there for sim racing series or esports series who are working with our own stewards in the NXTGEN Racing admin team in order to conduct all the stewarding and make sure there is the smooth operation and running of each and every round, whether it be from the server we host the racing on through to the actual presentation of the qualifying and racing sessions. But with them in mind then, let's come on to our calendar. So the season so far and the season ahead, we have completed 3 of the 8 rounds. Last time we were at Brands Hatch back in the United Kingdom, and that was the 21st of September 2021, of course, for what was a fantastic race at the British circuit. Indeed, whilst it was a difficult one to overtake at, we saw plenty of overtakes and plenty of drama, particularly on the final couple of laps. That battle between the leaders, between Harry Phillips and Andres Mésa, coming down to contact through Hawthorns and in, and it was Kieran Prendergast who had gone to take the win in such dramatic fashion when our 2 championship leaders collided and our 3rd place man got promoted to the top step. We now have a move on to round number 4, and we are here today at the Italian circuit of Monza, the Citadel of Speed. It's the 28th of September 2021, and a circuit which is a complete change from the first 3 circuits we saw on the calendar. You could say it's a little bit comparable to Zolder, which was in round 2, but we're not expecting it to be a heavy rain circuit today. Indeed, we are looking at relatively dry conditions, and this circuit is all about straight line speed and heavy braking braking potential, and we'll come on to why very shortly. And this marks the end of the first half of the season as of tonight, and all of our drivers will be looking to get the best possible result to set themselves up well for the second half of the season, where we still have 4 more very challenging circuits to come. Of course, Silverstone in round number 5 all the way through to the Nürburgring in the Super Endurance round in the finale of round number 8. Now, before we come on to the specifics of the circuit, let's talk about our championship standings. So after the opening 3 rounds, we can see at the moment the championship is led by Andres Mésa at the moment on 206 points. He is still being chased, however, by Harry Phillips. The British driver chasing after the Spaniard on 198 points, ruining the fact he wasn't able to bring home the win at Brands Hatch due to the contact between himself and Mésa. And in the end, what would have seen him jump to the top of the standings has seen him still in P2 on 198 points, 8 points off our championship leader. But look there in P3. He's been a little bit silent, but by no means less deadly than the others. Kieran Prendergast now into that P3 position and coveting it very nicely there with that win at Brands Hatch, 196 points to his name, and indeed he'll be looking to get an even better result tonight to try and jump himself up into P2 and take the fight to both Phillips and Mésa. In P4, the man known as Mr. Consistency, or Mr. Top 5, because he's not allowed to finish outside of it, it would seem. Ethan Faulkner there in the Ferrari, in 184 points at this moment, and continuing to press down his bearing for the top 3 in the championship. A very consistent set of results from Faulkner, and the Irishman will be looking to do even more so here tonight at Monza. Meanwhile, in P5, it's the BMW M6 there of what is Ralf Piringer, who has been putting in a very good string of results as well on 181 points. And indeed, our top 5 are very well mapped. But outside the top 5 as well, in that top 10, you've got the likes of Fox, Marcus Fox there in P6. Again, another Mr. Consistency, great driving from the Porsche driver, and really has been one of those drivers to stand out outside of our top 5 finishers. He's put in phenomenal work in all 3 opening rounds. Can he get a top 5 tonight? Andre Jacklin, unfortunately, the Slovenian, in what is P7 at 154 points, and really leading the charge for the top 6 there, because there's that sizable gap of 18 points between himself and Marcus Fox. We're not unfortunately going to be seeing the Slovenian out of the circuit tonight, so we expect that whilst we've got the absence of his Aston Martin, we'll be seeing other drivers have the potential to jump him into P7, including the likes of Paco Lara there in P8 with a season best at Brands Hatch, Fabio Chiena in P9 on 148 points, joint 148 points with Lara there. Only on countback is Chiena behind in terms of standings, and Rainer Efferstedt there into P10, jumping up into P10 there on 130 points after a good performance at Brands Hatch in the McLaren 720S. We'll look a little bit further now down in towards the top 20 then. We can see they're just outside the top 20 by 4 points. Martin Ullrich in the Mercedes AMG GT3, and we could expect that Ullrich is going to be taking the fight to everyone tonight in the very powerful beastly V8 machine. Daniel Korogoski as well in P12. Didn't quite work out as much as it could have at Brands Hatch last time out for the McLaren driver, but still putting in good performances, and we are expected tonight that he'll be able to do well once again. Lucas Seedorf, meanwhile, in P13 after what has been a difficult run of results since the opening round. Indeed, Seedorf finds himself just dropping a little bit down the order, but we'll be looking to bounce back tonight. He had, of course, that first lap incident at what was Brands Hatch, which saw him have to retire the car without even completing a lap in the race, and that's why he's down in P13 at the moment and not up there in the top 10. And we'll talk more about his faults going into the race a little bit later during the qualifying session. Looking a bit further down, Christian Ablasser there in P14. Paul Scott chased after it in P15. The two of them separated by 4 points. And Jesse Monroe's with a decent result at Brands Hatch, seeing him move to P16 with 95 points. And then we do have that splitted effect between our top 15 and then the rest of the top 20 there. And we can see they're just sneaking his way into the top 20 right now. Gareth Mills in P19, the South African driver, doing a great job at Brands Hatch. A consistent drive, some great battles from Mills. And now we're looking to see how he holds up versus Timofeo there, the Lamborghini driver, our sole Lamborghini driver over the round so far in P20, both on 87 points, but a fair down there on countback in terms of results. Just outside the top 20 then, coming on to the rest of our top 30 then, we can see Ant Brown there hoping to make a return tonight after a bit of absence, and it is the case on 84 points, not far off that top 20. And as we continue to go down, we can see Eduardo Tripiano there in P24 with 31 points. Can he close the gap and overhaul McKenna and Velkoski tonight, or will it be the case that he continues to hold on to that P24 position? And then all the way down in at P29 and really looking for an opportunity to shine is Max Malliard there, the other member of the Oculus Pfizer powered by BMW team, in P29 on 46 points. Results have not gone his way over the opening 3 rounds, and he will be looking to bounce back tonight. And then round off the rest of the field, we've got 42 drivers who've taken part in this series tonight, and we are expecting some more drivers going into the rest of the season. In fact, we've got some new drivers to introduce to you tonight. We can see Brandon Warren on his debut in the Nissan GTR Nismo at Brands Hatch, picking up 34 points, placing himself in P31 as he currently stands, and looking to get more points on the board. And looking further down there, we could also see another debutant last time out, Daniel Tran there in P34 in the Mercedes AMG, having a bit of a learning experience and a bit of character building at Brands Hatch. What will he be able to do at Monza tonight? And then down in P40, making his debut tonight, we can see a Gaz there in P40, who will be bringing the Bentley Continental GT3, and Simon Huber as well. But that rounds up our standings, ladies and gentlemen, and now let's come on to our track. So we are, of course, in Italy, in Monza, Italy, for the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. And you can see here, based on the circuit map as provided to us by Will Pittinger from wikipedia.org, we're very grateful for the circuit maps provided to us. 11 corners and a lot of heavy braking zones. You can see, started off there on the start fifth straight, the very long straight that runs all the way down to the Rep Video chicane of turns 1 and 2, a very heavy braking zone. And you'll hear in sim racing circles and also in real world circles the worst possible 2 words you could put in a single sentence: Monza and turn 1. Put those in the sentence and you can imagine there's always going to be a big concertina effect, and there's bound to be some instances. There's always the expectation something's going to happen at turn 1. Will we see carnage at Rep Video? We hope not, of course, but our stewards will be eagle-eyed in case there is any contact. But as soon as you come out the Rep Video chicane, it'll be the run up Curva Grande or Curva Pisano through turn number 3 up towards the second chicane. The Regia chicane at turns 4 and 5, which is a little bit faster flying compared to the first chicane, and that brings us really onto our second sector, where our drivers will go through that chicane, through the 2 Lesbos, those medium speed corners with the sharper turn 7 compared to turn 6, the second Lesbo being a bit sharper on the apex compared to turn number 6. And then we've got the run down the Seraglio straight, or known also as the Seraglio curve, because it is a kinked straight, and that makes it all the way down to the end of sector 2 and into sector 3. Through the third chicane, known as the Ascari chicane, or Variante Ascari, through 8, 9 and 10, a fast chicane, a fast flying one indeed, starting off with the medium speed turn 8 and then building up speed through 9 and 10. And then you've got the long run down towards the final corner, Curva Parabolica, which has got a very large runoff area, and it is one of those corners where you want to nail that apex as early as possible so you can go on the offensive with the throttle, because the lap time and being able to get on the throttle is so critical to lap time here, and all of our drivers will be very conscious of that. Now, as for our rules, we have our standard rule that we are using the base 2020 variant of the balanced performance system as applied in Assetto Corsa Competizione on PC. We're not applying any special ballast or any special balanced performance to any of our drivers or cars. And as for the race, there is of course that mandatory pit stop where our drivers will require to take on at least 1 litre of fuel. Although changing tyres is optional, so if our drivers want to do the entire race on a single set of tyres, they can choose to do so. There is also no defined pit window. Our drivers may choose when to pit, and we have seen time and time again how this change in the rule compared to Season 1 has really shaken up the strategy, with a lot of drivers choosing to go as long as possible in the opening 2 rounds, but in round number 3, particularly at Brands Hatch, we saw some drivers go very early on their pit stop, none more so than Harry Phillips going right at the midpoint of the race compared to the guys around him, and that really shook things up considering and led to that dramatic finale. Now, we are due to have our drivers briefing in approximately 2.5 minutes or so, but we're just going to hop to our live pictures right now, and we can see our championship leader here, Andres Mésa, making his way right now through the right-hander there of what is... correct if I'm wrong there, that is the first Lesmo, going into the second Lesmo at turn number 7 right now. And indeed, for Mason tonight, it's going to be one of those situations where in his mind, he will be looking to try and get the best possible result to extend that championship lead over Harry Phillips. But so far, in terms of our times, we can see the fastest time set in this final free practice session is by Lucas Sidor here, who is parked up in the pits right now. And he'll be looking to get underway with that driver's briefing very soon, at 47.127, and he is being closely matched by Ethan Faulkner, only 2 tenths off as it currently stands. The Irishman there from Distinct GG parked up in the pits, as everybody is starting to come into the pits right now in order to get themselves set for the driver's briefing. Of course, that critical driver's briefing where we will be getting the overview of the special rules that are in place tonight, if any, and also I believe a little bit of an update with regards to some of the incidents from last week and some considerations that have spun off of that. Without further ado then, we check in with you guys and girls in the chat right now, and we can see Taco888. Hello guys, I'm Marco Ticini, Rider Next Gen. It's great to have you in the Twitch chat, Taco, and we will, Marco, and we do hope to see you out on the circuit tonight, or if not, if you're tuning in for the ride, that's always good as well. We can also see that we do have one of our new drivers in the Twitch chat saying hello, and that is Nestor Mejia, or as we would like to refer to him as Nestor Major, as he will be taken to the circuit tonight, and you can see him here, and this is his car. He'll be featuring NXTGEN, the Aston Martin Racing Vantage V8, and he is racing for Rasket Racing, and he is on his debut tonight, and we'll be talking more about his faults very shortly after the briefing. And we can also see a Next Gen Ultra there. I believe that's Kevin Smith in the YouTube chat saying Harry is definitely building up some momentum as we head into the later part of this championship. Definitely indeed, and I think he is ruining a missed opportunity at Brands Hatch. But without further ado then, we are going to head over to that driver's briefing, and it will be the lovely tones of Kevin Smith that get us underway very shortly. Now, as we are waiting, of course, ladies and gentlemen, just to clarify, this is occurring in a Discord channel, which you cannot see, unfortunately. So, as a result, you can imagine all of our drivers right now are in a virtual room, all waiting to get underway with the conversation. Well, it's more of a case that Kevin Smith will come in and lay down the law, and then if anybody's got any questions, then they will be posting them. I'll, of course, read out those questions and inform you of anything else that occurs, and provide any clarification if anyone does have any questions in the chat, And you can, of course, feel free to say hi, whether it's in the YouTube chat, alternatively the Facebook chat, or alternatively on Twitch. Do not be shy, feel free to say hi. I hope you're all doing very well and you're having a good week so far. And here is Kevin Smith to take us away with the driver's briefing. Of course, our organiser. I believe we are just waiting right now for Kevin to say something.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to round 4, our midpoint race in the championship here at Monza. Please bear in mind tonight, due to the weather variety setting, it is possible to have rain either in qualifying or during the race. It may not be straight away, but there's a chance it may happen during the race. Please bear this in mind. Also tonight, pit entry. Please hold a nice tight line coming round the final turn. We don't want any instance of drivers having to cut across the track in front of another driver to enter the pit to complete their pit stop. Also, pit exit. Please stay behind the white line until you are past the line at the end of the pit exit. This is, of course, there's oncoming traffic, and we all know this straight down Monza into turn 1 is a very fast one, and it can easily cause instance if a driver pulls out before that pit exit is clear. Please check your mirrors and relatives as well when doing so, just to ensure you're not going to impede anyone or someone's going to run into the back of yourself and ruin either your race or both drivers' races. We do have a couple of new drivers with us tonight as well, which have signed up for the second half of the season, including tonight's race. So just a couple of things to run over, guys. Qualifying, there's no queuing on track at all, in particular the last sector. There is 27 of yous on track set to do qualifying and the race at the moment. So please use your full out lap to find yourself some nice clean space on the track where possible. If you do invalidate your lap or have just left the pits and there are other drivers on a flying lap, of course, please allow these drivers past at an appropriate point, just so you don't impede their lap, and of course they will return the favour to you, hopefully. There is one mandatory pit stop, 1 litre of fuel required. It's entirely up to yourselves if you wish to change tyres at all during the race. There's no pit window, so the pit stop is when you wish to take it, as long as you take 1 litre minimum of fuel. Blue flags as well, guys. During qualifying, the slower car does not have to move out of your way, unless they're, of course, on an out lap or their lap is invalid. And the final thing as well, last week's appeal was denied, unfortunately. I will do a write-up for this and post it for you to see after the race as well, so you've got that information to hand. And if that's everything, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the general chat and we'll get these answered as soon as possible. You are free to leave the room if there's no questions, and qualifying will get underway in 1 minute. Good luck, everyone.
So I can see all of our drivers are leaving the briefing room there. And of course, Kevin just taking a little bit more time to give the briefing and readdress some of the rules which have been laid down since the start of the season for some of our newer drivers who may not be as acquainted or as memorising of the rules compared to some of our seasoned veterans of this series so far. And if you're wondering about that question with respect to the appeal, I believe that there was an appeal lodged with respect to the fact that we had 2 qualifying sessions effectively last time at Brands Hatch. The first qualifying session, which in the end had to be scrapped because it was set up as a second practice session, and then there was the actual qualifying session. That did lead to a little bit of a mix-up with regards to results, but I think we're going to get clarification of that outside of the broadcast tonight. It may be something entirely different. That's what I just believe it may be in association to, but still looking away from then and now looking forward to now. We are going qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, so we will be back very shortly with a qualifying session. Alrighty then, let's get things underway with qualifying at Monza. So all of our drivers will be taken to the circuit as rapidly as possible here. And remember, it is a case that at Monza, it is all about speed. And you can imagine that most of our drivers, if not all of them, will be running setups with minimal downforce on them. They will want the best possible top end speed. And I do wonder how many drivers will be trying to bunch up to get the slipstream off of other drivers. Now, what are we referring to by the bunching up and the slipstream effect? You can imagine when a car is driving along a road, particularly at high speed, and we're looking at speeds here of up to roughly 160 miles an hour going into some of these heavy braking zones, if not more, you can imagine that car is essentially creating a path through the air in front of it. Now, the air will slow down the car naturally, but if the car is creating a path through the air, then you imagine if a car's tucked in close behind it, as you can see here, Lucas Seedorf and Harry Phillips running nose to tail through the second Lesmo, the car behind will essentially not have that air in front of it to slide down, so it will go faster in the slipstream of the car in front. That's what we refer to the slipstream. It's that cleared air path. Now, of course, this air, you've got dirty air coming off the car in front as well. That's through the corners. That can cause a car to understeer, the car behind. Whereas it's the fact on the straights here, you can imagine if you're tucked into that airflow of the car ahead of you, you're going to gain a straight line speed boost. And imagine that in qualifying. We have seen it in real world qualifying, particularly in Formula 1. If you've ever watched a Formula 1 race in the last 5 years, if not the last decade at Monza, you'll have seen some of the most hilarious instances in qualifying where drivers have had to bunch up and not get qualifying laps in because everyone's been desperate to try and get that slipstream effect. But right now we can see Lucas Seedorf heading around here through what is Parabolica to take us around for an opening lap. Let's ride on board and see how his lap goes around the Italian circuit. So as he makes his way across the timing line then to start his opening flying lap and the first flying lap of the session, charging all the way down towards the Refugio chicane here at turn 1. Let's just see him go into that braking zone. Braking all the way down to first gear there from the 150 metre ball, going through the first 2 corners before stamping on the throttle pedal there and now charging all the way through Curva Grande through turn 3, and he's just got to gently keep the car to the inside of the circuit here. You'll see building up the speed, building up through the gears, the roar of that Ferrari engine of course, as he now comes through the right hander and makes his way up towards the second chicane here, the Rogier chicane, looking for that 150 metre board. And here coming down to second gear rather than first gear, flying through there, avoiding hitting the raised sausage curves to avoid unsettling the car. Now coming up into the first of the 2 Lesmos, into what is a third gear corner. Keeping it nice and tight there before flying out onto the exit curb. You can use all the runoff area of course before going into the second Lesmo, and you're looking at a 50 metre board now as he flows his way over the apex. Not going too high on the apex curve there because that can raise the car and unsettle it, and now charging down the Seraglio curve as he makes his way all the way down towards Ascari. Turns 8, 9 and 10 lie ahead. Looking for that braking board on the right hand side, then that 100 metre board hitting the brakes, coming down to third gear before attacking that apex at turn 8, right over the bumps before massaging the car through turns 9 and 10, but building up that throttle through 9 so we can go full attack through 10, using the runoff space as well, and now building up that speed down towards the Parabolica curve here, coming up towards turn 11, the final corner that can make and break a lap, and looking for that 100 metre board on the left hand side. Coming down to third gear here, keeping it nice and tight first. He'll be looking for his marker there on the right hand side. It'll be the marshal's post as he comes out there. He's now going to go all the way round, but he'll move back over to the right hand side here if he feels he's on the fast lap to shorten the run to the finish line here. And as he crosses the timeline, our opening flying lap of 47.3. A nice opener there from Seedorf. Will anybody be able to beat that early on? We see Andres Mésa already going fast there at 47.235. The Spaniard strikes. Kieran Prendergast not much further back with half a tenth between himself and our provisional pole sitter, but everybody coming through through right now all of our 30 drivers currently out on circuit as they make their way around on their current qualifying laps. And as we look a little bit around, we can see Marco Ticini here making his way through. Indeed, I think tucked in behind another car here, the McLaren driver, the Ticini Volante machine. Indeed, the team doing everything they can to try and get a good result here today as he makes his way through Parabolica. And it was great to hear from him in the Twitch chat earlier on, and now we see him out of the circuit, of course. Indeed, a number of our drivers do tune into live broadcast, trying to get a little bit of information on other drivers, or just simply able to see how their car looks online, where they need to fix a little bit of their livery for next time. But you can see that Ticini with what was a 49.2, not too bad of an opening lap. He's been fighting in the midfield for the most part, but a bit of a gap to the top 10 so far. A gap of what is approximately 0.3 of a second as it currently stands here, and slipstream so critical to a lap at Monza. You can imagine our drivers will be doing everything they can to try and find that slipstream over each of their respective laps. And as we look around, of course, meanwhile, Martin Ulrich here, currently in what is P5. There's the Mercedes driver as he makes his way out the second Lesmo. And we are expecting a potential shake-up in the order to a degree here. We are expecting that the Mercedes and the BMWs, with their natural straight-line speed advantage, particularly the BMW, that could be very strong as a result here. But it's in one case, you may have the car that's best suited to the circuit based on the 2020 balance of performance, but getting it around here in the fastest possible fashion is another skill in its entirety. As we hear that Prendergast has come into the pits and Ulrich is making his way all the way down towards Parabolica. Now we're going to stay with Ulrich here with 9.5 minutes remaining until the qualifying session is up here. Plenty of time for our drivers, at least another 4 to 5 laps available to everyone as we see Ulrich making his way through. Will he come into the pits? Or will he stay out here? He looks though he's in the middle of the road at the moment. Is he going to hang over to the right side? He does come out. He doesn't come into the pits. Does he improve? He's a second off the pole so far. He does improve. Now the gap down to 0.8 of a second. Our drivers will be loading their cars as lightly as possible with fuel here. But it does look as though provisional pole so far has been set by this man as he makes his way out the first chicane here. It's Andres Mésa at 47.091, and he's got a gap of almost 2 attempts to Kieran Prendergast right now as the BP Racing driver here makes his way down through Curva Grande. Now, checking in with some of the drivers in the build-up to proceedings tonight. One driver who we should shine the light on is one of our newcomers, and that is Mésa. Nestor Mésa here from Rasket Racing as he makes his way down towards Parabolica in the Aston Martin Racing Vantage V8, of course. Now, you may have seen him in some other broadcasts we've done recently, particularly on GT Sport. He is a massive fan of GT Sport, but he's decided to dip his toes into the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione. And what better way to do it than transition from one NXTGEN Racing Series to another? And what the Salvadorian driver, he's from El Salvador. What he was saying to me in the build-up to tonight is that he's very excited for the new challenge. He feels that the overall driving physics engine of this sim is different to GT Sport, especially with the brakes and the weight transfer in the cars, and he hopes to have a good race and avoid accidents or incidents. He's going into the unknown regarding strategy, but will try to do his best and learn from each and every round left in this championship. Of course, with this marking one of 5 remaining rounds, he will be doing everything he can just to get as much information on the board as he makes his way through the opening chicane here. And we can see so far the Slidestar drivers out there down in P30, but he's still got plenty of time to put in a lap. As I see someone has gone a bit deep into the what is the braking boards there, going down into the first chicane and has knocked one of the barricades around. But looking around the circuit, we've also got Brandon Warren here, and we have got the VRS Satellite Racing driver, of course, in the Nissan GTI. He's gone a bit wide there out of the second chicane. The Regia chicane completely missed it by the looks of things, but is now getting the car back up to speed, and that will mean that that lap is invalidated as he gets himself ready to go around for another qualifying lap. And Warren, of course, taking that daring approach of picking something nobody else is driving in this series, and that is the Nissan GTR. The Japanese beast absolutely roaring down the Seraglio straight here as he comes all the way down towards Ascari. Now looking further around, another driver I had the chance to catch up with very briefly as he was making his way to the car was the distinct GG driver, Chris McKenna, the Briton, of course, as he makes his way across the timeline. Currently P24. Does he improve on this lap? It looks like he improves only by 6 thousandths. That doesn't really move him anywhere, but you can see how tight those times are between drivers and how little time can be gained lap on lap as he makes his way down into the first chicane once again. And what the number 92 driver was saying to me in the build-up to tonight is that it's his first race in the NXTGEN Series, and having had a good start to one race, a good end to another. He's messed up the middle points of each race. As we see there, we've got a McLaren who's got it very wrong at turn at number 1. Turns 1 and 2, in fact, has gone through one of the boards. I think that might be, that's not Walter Lux. I'm trying to figure out who that is, but we have had, I think that might have been Lux. It's at least one of the TUG McLarens there. But now coming back to Chris McKenna, what he was saying is the fact that he wants to try and nail the midpoint of the race tonight. He's hoping to get through a race unscathed and maybe score his first top 10 in the series at Monza. Of course, everyone will be be on the lookout for carnage at turn 1, which he's hoping to avoid. And he's also hoping that his teammates, Andres Mésa and also Ethan Faulkner, can pull off great results. I mean, Mésa for the win, and maybe Faulkner to end up on the podium. Well, to give you an idea right now, where's Andres Mésa? Well, he is currently P2, as we see Ethan Faulkner, his teammate, has taken provisional path of 47.025. These two are very closely matched in terms of the qualifying stakes right now, and a little well to their own with regards to the fact that they have got a gap of 2.5 tenths to Kieran Prendergast in P3. Now, you do have to wonder, of course, at this point, whether the distinct drivers, and indeed all the team drivers, are on comms if they've got a team out on circuit, perhaps trying to line one another to get a little bit of slipstream, or whether it's the case they're just trying to give one another the space out on circuit, as I believe we do have there. I believe that was one of our Ferrari drivers starting to come up behind what was Chris McKenna, but you can see Lucas Seedor here, P4 as it currently stands, but meanwhile down in P6, but he was saying he was expecting perhaps Monza not to be the circuit that he was going to do as well at tonight, and I think he was favouring himself out of contention for pole position. The Wild Things Racing driver of Harry Phillips here in the Bentley Continental, of course, currently at P6, and as he crosses that timeline, he does improve by a 100th of a second, but it's not enough to get himself into the top 5 here, and I do think that Phillips has got an uphill battle, and that's why he was ruined missing out on the win at Brands Hatch, because he knows in his mind that this circuit's probably not going to play to the strengths of the Bentley. The strengths of the Bentley, great stability and good race pace, but it's not a car that's fantastic on the straights, and the reason for that is the majority of its torque and power is concentrated in the low RPM bands of each gear, which means a circuit such as Monza, which exposes the high-end torque of a car, the high-end RPM, that's where Phillips is going to struggle by comparison here, and I think he'll be trying to play this one to get a top 5 rather than looking at the win, but you never know what can happen at Monza, particularly if we have a major incident into turn 1, which all signs would say is not going to happen here so far, given we've got clouds. But remember, as Kevin Smith was saying in the driver's briefing, we may have some rain coming over during the course of the race. We will have to wait and see. Currently, our ambient temperature is 20 degrees centigrade with a track temperature of 26 degrees. Track conditions are optimal. All the rubber has been laid down. Of course, the more rubber going down during qualifying, the later you want to leave it for your qualifying lap. But right now, as Phillips makes his way behind Chris McKenna here, and we do have Emil Blaine there in the rear of your picture, and Paco Lara as well. Paco Lara currently sat in P11, and Emil Blaine, by comparison, I believe a bit further down the order. They all make their way down, of course, and as they continue to charge through, Emil Blaine down in P18 according to my timesheet, we can see they're just making their way through for another lap. But keep an eye on Lara tonight. I do expect the Spaniard is going to put in another strong result indeed. Some very strong results coming from the McLaren 720S driver. Will they be able to make it another top 10 tonight? That'll be the question, with 3.5 minutes to go in this qualifying session, as I can tell you that Kieran Prendergast has managed to separate the two distinct GG drivers of Faulkner and Mésa and get himself into P2, only 500ths off of Faulkner and only 1.5 hundredths ahead of Andres Mésa right now. The American really pushing hard here, buoyant after his win at Brands Hatch. Indeed, he was over the moon. He appreciated the fact that he was quite lucky to take the win, but at the same time, the momentum is strong with the BP Racing driver, and could he have a good chance at winning here tonight at Monza? That will be the big question in his mind as he makes his way down towards the opening chicane. As we can see, William Fold there in the Facebook chat saying, "Go Gaz," and I believe he might be cheering on what is Gaz Williams here, who is debuting tonight, and another debut driver, of course, Gaz Williams, as he makes his way through Ascari, currently in P7, the British driver making his way all the way down towards Parabolica, indeed getting ready to go for a lap. They're doing a bit of weaving to get those tyre temperatures up, and also just get the car factored in his hands. And only 7.5 tenths off of pole right now, and I know that sounds like a lot of time, but 7.5 tenths on your debut in this series, that's fantastic to see from Williams. And indeed taking the fight there with Harry Phillips, the only other Bentley driver ahead of him right now, and Phillips is 4 tenths faster and has gone to the pits. I think we might have seen everything from Harry Phillips. We will wait and see about that, but you can see Williams right now doing everything he can to go on to a flying lap and try and get himself further up that field. Now, talking about other drivers and who we had the chance to have a catch-up with, we did have the chance to speak to Emil Blaine in the build-up to tonight. He's currently parked in the pits, and what Blaine was saying, in short, is that all things considered, he was happy with his result last week, although he had the pace for a top 10, but unfortunately he was disrupted with back markers trying to come through the field, and that knocked him around slightly in terms of getting the results, but he got a P40 in the end. He was very happy with that. He doesn't know what to expect today. He's fairly experienced around Monza, as is the majority of drivers in his mind, but he knows that this is not the Aston Martin's favourite track, so he's just looking to keep it consistent and aim for a top 10 finish. And luckily for enough, there's more straights than corners, but you have to maximise every single corner exit onto the straights, and he's waiting to see what happens at turn 1. As we see, Gareth Mills has returned to the pits there in P23, and I believe with our 30 drivers out there right now, we are now just counting down our final qualifying laps, so drivers getting ready to go into their final flyouts, as we do see Ethan Faulkner here currently holding that provisional pole, as we've got one of the Oculus Visor powered by BMW M6 P6 is there parked array off circuit. I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that might be Max Maliar there just parked on the side of the road, but we will wait and see, as I believe the German driver, yep, that was the German driver indeed, as he now returns to race pace here as he makes his way through Lesmo 1, but he has got his teammate coming through, and I think they're trying to line themselves up here to work together, the two teammates. Maliar, of course, in the foreground, and you can see a little bit in the rear picture. Meanwhile, we've got Ralph Piringer, his teammate, and yep, they're definitely working together here to try and form a tow. Maliar's going to tow his teammate around the circuit and try and bolster his lap as much as possible. They most likely will be on comms to one another, giving one another team orders, but it's great to see a bit of teamwork there as well as they make their way through Ascari. But now with only half a minute to go before the timer shuts down, and it's the case that everyone is required to finish their current lap, you can definitely see Maliar, I think, providing that tow down towards Parabolica, and I think he's going to stay over to the right, as we are going to see Piringer essentially come off of that right-hand side line and go onto race 9. In fact, both drivers then making their way into the corner, and I do think this is perhaps not working out, as we do see it's the case that Maliar runs wide there, and this is to try and help Piringer out. Will Piringer improve with the assistance of his teammate as he comes through? He does not improve, and both drives into the pits instead, so it hasn't worked out for them. But meanwhile, a lot of drives still to complete current laps, including Faulkner, who's on one, and then we've got Kieran Prendergast here as he makes his way through the final corner. Can he potentially snatch that pole position off of Faulkner? We will wait and see as he comes through the final corner. He does not. He pulls into pits. Andres Mésa's into the pits as well. A lot of drives have come in. We still do have Martin Ulrich, who's come out the final corner right now and looks to be on a blister in that the M Technology driver. He crosses that timeline. He does not improve from P7. What about Gaz Williams, who's currently P8? Well, he's making his way down the Seraglio curve right now, and as he heads up towards Ascari here, it's the case 7.5 tenths separating him from pole position, and that's the furthest he's been away, and well, the closest he's been. He hasn't improved since we last looked at Williams as he makes his way through here. Behind there, you've got one, the McLaren drives. I think that may be the McLaren driver of Scott behind him. Paul Scott, as they make their way surging down towards Parabolica here, but we've got very few drives now out on circuit, so everyone just wrapping up their final laps. Will Williams be able to spring a surprise and get himself up onto, say, the third or the second row? I think it may be possible if he's absolutely nailed the lap on here, but he has got a long way to go. It does seem as though the top 7 are in a little bit of a world of their own at the moment. 3 attempts clear of Williams as Williams comes across the line here, and he improved. Williams, I say that, I will rinse my mouth out with soap immediately, ladies and gentlemen. 4 attempts is the gap between Williams and pole position. He moves up to P6. A brilliant lap there by Williams, and we've got more drives out as we see Daniel Tranner's coming to the pits from P14. We've also got Fabio Kenner who's just come in. No, Fabio Kenner has just parked up on exit there, but it does look as though pole position in the end has gone to this man. It's Ethan Faulkner as he crosses the timing line there to complete his final qualifying lap. The Irishman with a 47.0, a brilliant lap for pole. Let's get ready for the race. As we return to our live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we can see all of our drives now lining up on the starting grid. We will, of course, have the manual double file rolling start, which we start all races with, and it will be a tour of the circuit. We start on the grid, we go around for a whole lap, and our drivers use that time, of course, to warm up their tyres, warm up their brakes, and get themselves settled. But it will be Ethan Faulkner who takes us away for that. And riding on board here with Ethan Faulkner, looking at him in the cockpit, you can imagine what's going through his mind right now. This is a little bit of unknown territory for Faulkner. He hasn't been on pole in this series so far. He's always been, however, inside that top 10, normally on the third or the second row. What can he do from pole tonight? He's going to have a fellow Ferrari on the front row with him, and that is Kieran Prendergast, who we look on board with now. And of course, for the American, what can he do to perhaps snap the lead off of the Irishman? Now, will he go for the attack into turn 1? That'll be the question, or does he go defensive? Remember, we have that huge concertina effect on all our drives, where it's the case that the drivers at the front of the field will have the slowest speed going into the opening chicane, whereas the drivers right at the back will have the highest speed because they have the longest run. And it's about everybody nailing their braking points, and the incidents normally occur because somebody in the midfield or further back will not hit their braking point and instead careen it into other drives in front. You get that domino effect, and like a pile of dominoes, the cars start to collide into one another. But we're hoping not to see that, of course, today. Looking a little bit further back, however, we look at Anthony Brown, Ant Brown, of course, who has returned tonight, the Code Brown Racing driver, and he is starting at P10. A good qualifying result from Ant, and now he will be looking to try and convert that into a top 10 finish. I think he'd be very grateful for that in the McLaren 720S. Perhaps not the strongest circuit for the McLaren, but we do know the McLaren is a rather strong car overall, and he is alongside fellow McLaren driver Paco Lara, and the Spaniard from the Prototype Racing team for 2021-2022 has done a fantastic job in the last couple of rounds of seeing those results really come to form. Will Lara be able to make it another top 10 finish today, or will there be a spin in the tail? That'll be the big question. Further down, Victor Tolera here, P15 in the Ferrari, the 488 GT3 Evo from the AF Course team, and he will tonight be looking to try and get himself into that top 10, no doubt here. Finding himself right in the midfield, not the most ideal position, and it's one of those situations where I think he's just got to try and knuckle down and hope that things go his way and stay out of trouble on the opening couple of laps. That's what I'd normally recommend to any driver who's going to Monza and they start in the midfield. Just try to stay out of trouble. Even if you lose a couple of places in the opening chicane on the opening lap, just avoid the trouble, because if you can get through lap 1 at Monza without an incident, then you can have a proper race on your hands. But looking at further down the order, of course, right at the back, we have got on his debut here, we've got Andres Mésa, as he's going to be starting from P29, and Christian Ablasa will be starting P30. I think he may have had his time taken from qualifying due to a return to garage. Remember, our drivers are not allowed to use return to garage until they've made it into the pits, but we're not 100% sure on that. But it is the case that right now, our debutant here will be looking to do everything he can from P29. Can the Salvadorian get himself into that top 20, or will he just try to stay out of harm's way? And one other driver who we didn't have the chance to talk about, we did catch up with him in the build-up to tonight, of course, was one Lucas Sidor, who will be starting at P4. You can see him here parked up in what is the P4 position in the Ferrari 488 as they bring the car off the jacks there. They've just done a little bit of changes to the settings. And what Lucas was saying to me in the build-up to tonight is that this is the track where everything began for him in terms of learning to sim race back in January 2021. Even though he had no time to practice because of work and other races ahead of tonight, he aims for a top 5 and silently for the podium. Wants to redeem himself after last race, where a McLaren driver, unfortunately, in an incident between himself and a McLaren driver, as we said earlier, Lucas Sidor had to retire on lap number 1 due to contact between himself and another driver. And it wasn't able to go his way in the end, and instead he'll be looking to get himself back into the top 10 tonight, and we do hope he's able to achieve that, and good luck to all of our drivers, of course. And we do see there, we have got in the Twitch chat, Shadowstalker DBS, it's good to see you, Shadowstalker, I hope you're doing well. Kiori TV as well, I forgot to say hello to Kiori earlier. Good luck to you, well, good luck to all of our racers from Kiori TV, and I hope you're doing well, Kiori. And we've also got there, William Foles saying that Gaz for a podium. Well, indeed, if Gaz Williams starting from P6 with 40 seconds to go until we get underway with the rolling start, what can he do? Line up alongside the Wild Things Racing driver there of Harry Phillips. The two Bentley drivers will be going toe-to-toe. One of them a veteran in this series and contending for the championship. The other one making his debut tonight. Which one of them is going to come off on top, or will it be the case they find a way to mutually work together over the course of the race? Looking a bit further back, of course, we can see Ulrich here from P8. What can he do with the Mercedes? A good starting position for Ulrich, one of his best in the season so far. Can he convert this into a top 10 finish? Let's wait and see as the countdown comes to its end, and we now wait for Ethan Faulkner to take us away as we jump to the helicam here, and he will pull off the line. So as he takes our field away, it will be Faulkner the Irishman who determines the pace of this warm-up lap, the parade lap indeed, as all of our drivers make their way now around the circuit and try and get as much temperature in the car as possible, particularly the tyres and also the brakes. We can see we've got clouds over at the moment. The rain that was forecast has not arrived on circuit as of yet. That does not mean we're not going to see rain during the race. Of course, some drivers might be hoping for a spot of rain, others will not be hoping for rain. Honestly, for me, I think we've got enough to contend with without the rain here, and the rain's only going to spice things up even more, so we will wait and see. I assume that some drivers, pit crews down in the paddock will be doing the rain dance right now, but we will wait and see. We will see, and time will tell over the course of the 75 minutes as to exactly what is going to happen. As we now wait for that build-up, of course, all of our drivers now will be getting going and just checking in with the stewards. They are good to go as well, which is fantastic to see. And we're just checking out one last time. If there's any further announcements or items, there's none at all. So it is the case. We are all set to go as our drivers make their way around the circuit right now. As we look a little bit further down the order, we can see Robert Velkoski there in P17. We ride on board with Velkoski right now. The Porsche driver here didn't have the strongest of qualifying sessions, but the back-to-motion driver has normally done better in the races. We normally seen Velkoski will start in the middle of the run from P11 to P20, and he will find his way up into contention for a potential chance at a top 10 finish, particularly P10 or P9, or just outside it over the course of the races. And this is one of his core strengths, as we get a bit of a faceful there of a Mercedes that's cut through him. But fortunately, we do have the ability to go through cars here in the course of the warm-up lap. Otherwise, we'd see some drivers potentially have major incidents on the laps. That's one of the features of Assetto Corsa Competizione on PC. But Velkoski will be looking for another strong result tonight. Qualifying perhaps not his strength, but definitely his race trim is something which others admire and would love to have. As we look a little bit further back here, and we can see in P18 today, it'll be Sylvain Pastoris, the Rinaldi Racing driver, the Swiss, doing everything he can. But he'll be started towards the bottom end of the top 20. Can he find his way up the field? And as for Emil Blaine, well, he'll be looking to try and stay out of trouble. The Aston Martin driver, will he be able to? The NRT and Nordic Racing Team driver there, you can see in the number 604 car. He has got behind him Rainer Efferstate, however, and Rainer will be doing everything he can to try and find his way through the field. Meanwhile, even further back, Gareth Mills in P20. It's P23 there. Mills will be doing everything he can. The GM Racing driver, one of the fan favourites as well. He's got a lot of support who tune in on a regular basis. They refer to him as Millsy. Will he be able to pull off something magical tonight and get back into that top 20? We will wait and see as they all make their way down Seraglio now. We've got all of our field coming through. 30 drivers by looks of things, although I think we have had one driver. Well, we do have 30 drivers indeed. That was just our time screen being a little bit awkward there. Christian Ablas will be bringing up the rear of the field from TUG Racing Esports Green. Meanwhile, it's Ethan Faulkner who now takes our field down towards Parabolica here and now starts to bring them all together in preparation for going through Parabolica, and it's the run into the start finish straight. A very long run down towards turn 1 as they all make their way down to Retfilio chicane. It could all kick off on lap 1 at turn 1. Let's wait and see what happens as Faulkner gets us ready to go racing. 2 Ferraris locking out the front row, and it's the case that Andres Mésa behind there, and we also got Lucas Seedor on that second row. Meanwhile, our other championship rival compared to Mésa, i.e. Phillips, starting on the 5th row. And we've also got Prendergast there in P3 currently looking to get himself into that championship fight. Will he be able to do so from P2? As they make their way around, we'll let the roar of Faulkner's Ferrari take us away. And we are green and we are going, and immediately look at Prendergast on the offensive versus Faulkner getting a really good start, but then Harry Phillips further back there, you can see he's had a good run already versus where's Andres Mésa, and also by the looks of things Lucas Seedor, as they all start to bunch up into turn 1 here. You can see Phillips losing out in the braking stakes a little bit and being squeezed there in trying to do a Moses manoeuvre, but as they all come through, Prendergast tapping the back of Ethan Faulkner. There looks as though there's been a lot of contact. Also Seedor there going for a spin, as further down the order we can see they're starting to all come together, but everybody mostly making it way through. I think that's Paco Lara's also gone for a spin on the apex of turn 1, but there's already been drama on the opening lap. Indeed, a lot of drivers dropping down the field as they all make their way now through Curva Grande, and we can see Rainer Everstate here being on the offensive as he tries to make his way through, and as he comes charging up towards the second chicane here, he's got Walter Lux there just behind, as you can see as well. That looks to be Gareth Mills who's trying to get on the action. We've got a Porsche running wide, they're coming careening across the circuit, missing his braking point, and we've got a big collision there. That looks as though we've got Sylvain Pastoris in there, but look at Everstate's been able to dodge all the carnage. Meanwhile, further out the front, we can see Prendergast with everything that's happening with Faulkner. There was the contact, of course, between Prendergast and Faulkner, where he's definitely up into P1 right now, but this has been definitely an upset for a good number of drivers here, as the Helicam has told us what's happened. But we can see Andres Mésa and Harry Phillips already charging their way down towards what is Ascari, and you can see Piringer getting in the mix here as Piringer tries to find a way around the outside versus Mésa, and Mésa stays in there for the time being, but they're both side by side for Ascari. But in the end, it's the case that Piringer has to back out as Piringer looks to go on the offensive, but look behind. In fact, that's Paco Lara there. That was another one of the McLarens who got it wrong earlier on. Apologies for the confusion. And Paco Lara on the offensive already, trying to find a way past what is Piringer as they make their way up into Parabolica for the first time of asking. But as they come through the right-hander here, you can see there's no way through, as it's a case that Mesa's got it a little bit wrong on the braking point. And as they come out of the corner right now, you can see that Lara's had to be bunched up as a result and takes the wide line here. So after one lap, it is Kieran Prendergast leading by approximately what is around 1.5 seconds, ahead of Harry Phillips, followed by Andres Mésa in P3, who is under attack right now from Ralph Piringer in P4. We stay with these two for the time being as they come roaring down towards turn number 1 here. And as they come into the chicane, you can see Mésa going defensive versus the BMW M6. We said the M6 would be very strong in the straights versus the Aston Martin, and it's proven to come to fruition, but no change this time. Then it's Paco Lara in P5, who's holding off right now Gaz Williams on his debut, who's in P6 still and trying to fight on. We've got Marcus Fox, who's made some gains on the open lap. Fox in racing up into P7. Then we've got Martin Ulrich, who's still in P8. He hasn't lost or gained any positions on the open lap. Then we've got Walter Lux in P9. Fabio Kenner, well, not Fabio Kenner, my apologies there. Well, as is the case, we have got Fabio Chiena, who's just got past Victor Tolera there as they make their way up into the second chicane here, into what is a very difficult one, Roger's chicane, as they come through. But it's the case that right now Chiena are ahead of Tolera as they make their way through the chicane and now head down towards the second of Lesbos. Then we've got Daniel Tran in P12 right now, gained a lot on the opening lap as he makes his way through the first of 2 Lesbos. Emil Blaine up into P13. He's gained 6 positions over the course of the opening lap. Rain Affenstein in P14. Marco Ticini in P15 there. We've got confused with Ticini just ahead of Gareth Mills as they make their way through the second Lesbo. Then we've got Martin Pavison, who's down in P17 and trying to close up. Max Maniar in P18 chasing after. That's the other Jochen Sveiser powered by BMW machine. Brandon Warren in P19 and then Anthony Brown in P20 completed our top 20 of the field so far, but you can see Brandon Warren on the offensive there in the McLaren as they come roaring through. Got a bit of dust kicked up as well at Ascari. I think somebody might have had an off there as we see Brandon Warren trying to get on the offensive versus Maliot as they come through turn 10 and now head down towards turns number 11. And as they charge all the way down, it's been a dramatic opener to this race. And to give you an idea, our drivers who were caught up in all of that, well, Ethan Faulkner, after starting on pole, is now all the way down in P25 and he is battling already with Sylvain Pastoris, who was also involved in the incident. It was the second chicane at the Rogier chicane. You can see Pastoris going in side by side there versus what is Trippiano. Trippiano in the Porsche there staying to the wide line, and you can see Faulkner immediately coming through. Faulkner just wants to get through these guys as quickly as possible because he knows he's got the pace to be right up there, but he's all the way down in what is P23 as he's side by side with Pastoris as they go across the timeline. And I think Pastoris is going to tuck it behind. He recognises the fact that Faulkner is a faster driver. He's not going to be able to keep up lap on lap, but I say that you can see Pastoris just constantly keeping himself just in and out of the slipstream there, and I think he's trying to get a message through to Faulkner. Look, take the lead. I just want to take the slipstream off of you. I know you're not going to be staying with me for much longer. You're going to be pulling off into the distance, and Pastoris trying to use that to give himself some clearance versus Trippiano, being smart about it. Chris McKenna down to P26, a bit of dust being kicked up there on the exit of where's the opening chicane. You can see Mejia there just behind the Salvadoran trying to find his way past the Bentley driver. The Bentley proving to be very wide through Curva Grande now as they come roaring through in the battle for P26. And we've also got in the rear view picture there, that is Christian Ablasser trying to get into the mix in the AMR Racing machine as they make their way into the heavy braking zone here. You can see Mejia on the inside here versus McKenna. He's gone for the move. He's got a bit deep and has to take the runoff area. He will have gained the place, but he'll need to give it back, and he does so immediately as he rejoins the racing line. A good attempt to move, but a bit of a lock up under braking there. Andres Zappos in P29, and last but not least, Paul Scott, who we can see making up the rear of our field. But we look from the rear of our field to the front of the field, and we can see Prendergast right now gradually being reeled in by Harry Phillips here. The gap is now 7/10 of a second and closing. Now, I think there might be a little bit of a cloud hanging over Prendergast's contact with Faulkner, but that's for the stewards to look at, and we'll keep you briefed on that as soon as we hear anything about it. Our stewards are furiously at work right now as we do say hello to Digital Car Culture in the YouTube chat. Howdy to you as well, Digital Car Culture. And we've also got MGK3888 saying carnage in the YouTube chat. Indeed, quite a bit of carnage on the opening lap, but it does mean this race has opened up, and it's a 15-second penalty for Prendergast immediately from the stewards, and that was the contact on the open lap into turns 1 and 2 between himself and Faulkner. And we expected as much that something was going to come down with regards to that, and Prendergast has picked up the 15-second time penalty, which he will have to serve when he comes into the pits. Meanwhile, Harry Phillips there chased after right now, and for Phillips, this is a comfortable place to be in because he will know in his mind right now that he can gain the lead. If he can find a way past Prendergast or simply stay with Prendergast and mount that pressure, he will gain the lead when Prendergast comes into the pits. But for Andres Mésa right now, our P3 man, our championship leader, he will now want to close up to Phillips because he will know Phillips will have a clean run if he's allowed to get past Prendergast. And behind them, Ralph Piringer not able to stay as behind. We can see we've got Paco and Lara battling with Williams here. Gaz Williams on the inside into the first of the 2 Lesmos. Not able to find a way through, but he is starting to prove a bit threatening here, and this is what Williams will want to do. He wants to find a way to put pressure on the Spaniard, does the Briton, as they make their way through the right hand, and you can see Lara just going a little bit wide there, coming out to the second Lesmo in the rear of your pitch. However, that's Walter Lux in P8 right now. Lux has gained massively on the opening lap as they make their way down towards Ascari once again. You can see Fox 1.5 seconds up the road from Lux right now, but Lux comfortably 1.1 seconds clear of Fabio Chiena in P9. And this, well, I think we've already had the switch. We have indeed. It is the case that Prendergast has switched with Phillips here, and I'm wondering if he's run wide out of either one of the two Lesmos. We didn't see it on camera, but I do think that there has been an incident involving Prendergast because he has lost out considerably, and he seems to be continuing to lose time here. Has something gone wrong with Prendergast's car? Has he picked up some damage, some critical damage on what was the opening lap through that contact with Faulkner, or has he simply flat spotted a tyre? And you can see Prendergast really struggling for speed right now as Andres Mésa is closing up very rapidly. Prendergast on that last lap of 50.2 versus Mesa's 47.9. He's definitely had an off, or something has gone horrifically wrong as we see McKenna coming out the pits here, and he's going to stay to the right of that white line, of course that pit exit line, as he rejoins the racing line now into the braking zone for the chicane. And that's for safety, as was said by Kevin Smith in the build-up. But behind, you can see Gaz Williams has just made the move under braking into what is turn number 1 there. A brilliant move by Williams. We just caught that in the distant camera shot. We went down the inside versus Paco Lara, and now we're up into P5. But will Lara come back at him? That's the big question as we do ride on board here with the Bentley driver. Wide as it may be, you can see Lara looking to the inside into the chicane. As we look back to the exterior cameras, he looks there, but he's not able to find it. Lara just not able to beat the Bentley on the brakes here, and Williams holding on to that P5 for the time being as Paco Lara continues to hold a rather ominous presence behind in P6. But we've still got to remember, an hour and 6.5 minutes of racing to go. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and our drivers will be treating it like that one, and Lara will be very conscious of that as they make their way through the second Lesmo and head down towards Ascari once again. But speaking of drivers who are falling down the order, we can see it's Prendergast who's got contact. Well, he's not in contact, my apologies, but he's going to be coming into a battle with Andres Mésa very soon, and the Aston Martin driver right now building up that pressure to Prendergast. And I think for Prendergast right now, he may also be a little bit unsettled by the 15-second penalty that's been applied, probably thinking that he didn't do anything wrong, he doesn't deserve it. But that's of course for the driver and whatnot to sort out. He's got to get his head back in the game, and I'm sure he will as they come all the way down towards Parabolic. You can see Prendergast squeezing Mésa as tight to the inside as possible, but in the end Andres Mésa finding a way on that inside, given the racing room. Of course Prendergast showing that respect, going a little bit wide there on the exit. I'm not sure if there was contact, a bit of a flash of lights. I think he may have felt as though there was a small bit of contact between the two of them. He tucks in behind immediately. Prendergast going on the return offensive here versus Mésa as they make their way across that timeline. They go on to lap number 6 right now, and you can see Andres Mésa does not want to let the Ferrari driver through. He wants to hold on to that P2 and go hunting down Phillips, as we see Prendergast flashing his lights there, I think trying to simply put off the Aston Martin driver as they make their way through the opening chicane once again. But Andres Mésa consolidates the position for the time being as they make their way now through Curva Grande here. 1 hour and 5 minutes remain. Of course, only 10 minutes to pass right now, but it has been a dramatic opening 10 minutes, and it has seen a bit of an upset with regards to our pole position man, who currently, to give you an idea, is all the way down in what is, as I understand it, P21. As further back there, we can see we've got Paco Lara versus... Well, no, it's not Paco Lara, so that is Gaz Williams coming past Chris McKenna into what is the second chicane. And as a result, Lara now focusing on the long game as we've got a drive-through penalty for Fabio Chiena here, who's got Ulrich behind him as Ulrich goes wide there through the second chicane through Regia. And as a result, now needs to get the car back under control. And Emil Blaine in P12 right now, gaining where these guys are losing out. And Blaine could definitely be on for a top 10 at this rate. He's looking very good right now, just keeping it consistent, and that's what it's all about, and that's what he's saying. He just wanted to have a consistent race, and he's finding it. Now, why has Chiena got a drive-through, you may ask me? Well, that is, as I'm just trying to find out right now, that is a drive-through for car number 47. Spins car 45 round when there's enough space in front to slow down in time without causing contact. So it's for avoidable contact with car number 45. And who is car number 45, you may be asking me right now? That is Ant Brown, and Ant Brown, who was up into the top 10, of course, in qualifying, is all the way down in P18 right now, and that explains why he's fallen down. It was the contact between himself and Chiena. And looking in the rear view picture, you've got Faulkner here, who's on a charge versus Maliar. Maliar defended. It's, oh goodness me, there's contact between the two of them as Maliar was there, and Faulkner with a 10-second penalty as well. And that is because of, well, I believe, as we're trying to figure out why, that's for rejoining the circuit and making contact with two other cars. An unsafe rejoin earlier in the race on lap 1, turn 1. We did see that rejoin from Faulkner, and as a result now, he's had that contact with Maliar, which the stewards will be looking at. But I do think it's the case that right now Faulkner's race is going from good to bad to a nightmare to one he wants to put to bed already as he continues to drive on. We've got Trippiano as well with a drive through there, as well as we do see Faulkner carrying on past the pit lane here. Of course, he only has to serve that penalty in the pits. He doesn't have to do it as a drive through or as a stop and go right now. as we see Kieran into the pits to take care of his drive-through. But whilst this is all going on, I can tell you that Andres Mésa has cleared Prendergast enough to give himself a bit of time of day between the two of them. He's put 9/10 of a second between the two of them as they go through the second chicane, and he is holding on to P2. Now, as he makes his way through, of course, the P4 man, Ralph Pieringer, right now, he'll be thinking about the fact that this is looking good for a potential P3 as things currently stand. We do, of course, have Gaz Williams, who's 1.7 seconds down right now, the number 90 car there, who you just saw briefly making his way up towards Lesmo 2. And you see him in the rear view camera shot, but focusing on Pieringer right now. If he can keep this together and put in a solid stint, you can imagine he would love to take a step on the podium today. That would be absolutely fantastic, as we've got a stop-and-go penalty for Nesta Major as he makes his way into the pit. And I'm trying to think why that is. I think that's for track limits most likely, because we haven't had anything come through on the stewarding board. And as for Eduardo Tripiana with what is a drive-through penalty, if you're wondering why that has happened, that is for turn 4, for cutting turn 4. We did see that on camera and causing contact with several cars in the process instead of moving off track. We did see him losing it in the run to turn 4, and we saw the wayward Porsche, and that is why Tripiana had the drive-through penalty. So that clarifies all of our penalties and whatnot that have been given out so far, but it has been a very dramatic opening 15 minutes right now, as we see Pieringer making his way across that timeline to go on to lap number 8. And as for Andres Mésa, he's pulling away from Prendergast and now hunting down Harry Phillips. But the gap between these two, last time around for Andres Mésa, a 48.063, Harry Phillips, a 48.036. So pretty much the same in terms of numbers in the lap time, just in case Harry Phillips was at that time around 300ths faster. And that is how close those two are running together. As we do see Walter Lux here looking for the move on Marcus Fox into the opening chicane. The two of them are side by side. Keep it clean, lads. Lux looking for the move, but Fox holds on for the time being. But now he's going to be in the attacking position. Is Lux as they make their way down through Curva Grande here and head up towards what is turns 4 and 5. Building up that speed, of course, as Lux tucks in behind. He looks for the move as he's building up the speed, heading towards that braking zone. You can see Fox defends the inside here. There's no way through this time for Lux. The TUG Racing Esport driver just has to wait for an opportunity. As you can see, Fox there very hesitant to even go near the sausage curb on the exit of turn 5. Doesn't want to clip it and unsettle the rear of the Porsche, as now they make their way into the first of the two Lesmos. Fox there going a little bit deep. Lux taking a much earlier apex, but he loses on exit there. You can see that Fox has a rather different line, but he's able to make it work and gain a lot of acceleration out the corners as both drivers come out of the corners and now make their way down Seraglio towards Ascari. But as they build up the speed here, no change right now. As we do see further behind, we do have Victor Tolera here, who, as we look back, we can see battling with what is Ulrich here as they make their way into the left-hander of what is Ascari here, turn number 8. You can see it's the case that Tolera on the inside, he gets the move on Ulrich. He holds the position as Ulrich jumps very high in the curb and actually runs off the circuit there, getting sent off circuit coming through turn number 9. And we can see Blaine taking evasive action to avoid the wayward Mercedes, and Blaine now up into P10. And I think for the Nordic Racing Team driver here, he's probably going to be grinning right now when his crew chief tells him he's up into that position. But we look a little bit further up front. Oh, goodness me, there's been contact between Tolera and Lux. There has been contact between the two of them as we see Tolera rejoins here on the outside of Parabolica. Lux on the inside with a little bit of an oversteering moment, I think, through the contact between the two cars. And now Blaine's going to go through the middle of them. This is a Moses maneuver as he pots the Caesar cars. He comes all the way down here. It's a 3-wide run in the battle for P8 in towards turn 1. And can Blaine beat them both on the brakes? He's going to have the momentum. Can he do it? He's done it. And I think he's made it up into P8 through here. And you can see that Tolera holds the inside versus Lux as Ulrich now tries to come through into this battle for the top 10. The Mercedes driver at the rear on your right hand side as he knocks a bollard out of the way. That's going to cost a little bit of speed there. I think that's a brake board, in fact. But you can see Ulrich now versus Lux as they come roaring through what is Curva Grande and head up towards the Regina chicane. And as they make their way out towards turn 4 and 5 here on the braking, Ulrich just cannot find a way through here and capitalise where Blaine has done so as well. And Blaine, by just simply avoiding making any mistakes, has just gained 3 places in the space of half a lap. As we can see there, Lux versus Tolera, and it is the case that Tolera goes a bit deep as Lux looks away from him. He gets snap oversteer on the corner. That McLaren proving very tricky when in those medium speed corners. And now it's the case that Ulrich goes around. There's the number 530 driver, just loses out by getting it wrong on the first Lesmo there, just not able to carry the speed he would like, and he tucks in behind now, behind behind Ulrich as they make their way up towards Ascari here. Brilliant battle in between these guys, a bit of contact early on, but you can't take away anything from them. They all want to be in that top 10, and right now it is a major change at all of them as they make their way through the right into left combination here, and Lux just tucks in behind Ulrich for the time being. He's not able to find a way through. As we look a little bit further down the order, we can see Gareth Mills right now in P14. As we see ahead of him, you can see it's Evenstedt who's just showing drop behind Tran by looks of things as they make their way down towards Parabolica once again. We can see the Mercedes driver Tran at the front of your picture there, and meanwhile we've got FHD who's just made his way through, and as they come through Parabolica curve here to complete what is their 9th lap of the circuit for these guys, you can imagine right now they're all chomping at that opportunity to get into what is the top 10. They'll see it just up the road and they'll see how much they've been fighting one another on those timing screens as we look back up towards what is the battle for P9 once again, and we see Tolera versus Ulrich here, and Ulrich on the inside into the first corner, and it's the case that Tolera takes the run off there and turns it into a bit of a rally cross and just rejoins on turn 2 and gets the car back together in the end. Now as he makes his way through, where has Ulrich gone? Well, Ulrich has been knocked. I think Ulrich's been contacted. I think something's happened with Ulrich, but he's gone off there. We didn't quite see that in the camera shot, but I think there was contact between Ulrich and Tolera, and that's why Ulrich's now down to P12 unless he's got it very wrong on exit. But look behind Pavusen, who's a lap down of course with the contact on the opening lap, and then we've got FHD and Mills closed up behind. It's kicking off as Pavusen moves out the way there. He just takes off the circuit. He doesn't want to get involved in any of this. The blue flags we waving feverishly right now, showing great respect to the rules there. It's Pavusen, he's down that P27 position, but Ulrich right now needs to find his head back into this race because Daniel Tran's just ahead of him in P11, and then Tolera's just a little bit out the road, and he doesn't want FHD and Mills to get ahead of him because right now the McLaren army behind of FHD, Mills and Ticini would love to take on that Mercedes as they all make their way down Seraglio here. And speaking of taking on one another, we ride on board with Gareth Mills here who's looking for an attempt versus FHD in the slipstream here. They make their way down towards what is Ascari, but you can see Mills backing out of it here. The GM Racing driver, I think, respecting the fact that himself and FHD are on similar pace. Last lap around, it was the case that goodness me, Mills getting it a bit wrong there for Ascari, getting hooked onto the curb, and as a result, he's got Ticini coming down his inside now. I believe Ticini's come through there with Mills making a mistake on the apex of turn number 9, getting hooked too high on the curb, and it's something that can happen in the McLaren because it's so reliant on its downforce and its aerodynamics, the McLaren, and as they make their way through Parabolica here, it is the case that Ticini up into P14 with Mills making a small mistake at Ascari, but right now any of these drivers could be into that top 10 fight in the near future. You have to think that if it kicks off up onto them again, they will all be in that fight once more. As we look back ahead right now, we can see that Tolera now 2 seconds down on Walter Lux is up the road in P9 right now. The McLaren driver just trying to break away into a distance, and then further up the road, 5.8 seconds up from Tolera is Blame right now, who's having the race of his life as it currently stands. 56 minutes to go in this one, and you can imagine it is all going to continue to erupt here. It's not the case we see it. In terms of our weather forecast, right now we just have cloud over the circuit, no rain forecast, but I tell you what is forecast, a battle for P11. Daniel Tran in the what is the Half-Life Mercedes versus what is Martin Ulrich there from the M Technology machine, and as they go through the second chicane, it is the case that Tran holds the position for the time being, showing defensive driving on the inside there. We can see ahead of Tolera really struggling to keep the car stable on circuit right now. I think Tolera has got an issue with that car after the runoffs earlier on because he is being caught massively here by Tran and Ulrich as they make their way for the right-hander of second Lesmo. Alright, that's turn 7 in numerical format, and you can see Tolera just got no speed in the run out of Lesmo's here. I think he could be up for a double overtake in the rest of this lap right now as they make their way down Seraglio. You can see here Tran going for the move on the inside here, and it's also going to be Ulrich. Ulrich's looking for a potential squeeze in the middle, but there's no way he can make that happen, and in the end it's the case that Tolera holds on as Tran backs out of it on the brakes on that inside line. There's not enough apex for him to take, and as they make their way through Ascari, once again here is the case that Tran are looking offensive versus our P10 man, but now he's got to worry about Ulrich, who will look for the opportunity to come back at him of course. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Harry Phillips right now leading by almost 5 seconds ahead of Andres Mésa. And these guys will be focusing on their stintage right now. Nothing more, nothing less. They need to manage this one in terms of the strategy right now. And Mésa, I think, just matching lap times with Phillips. Well, I say that. Phillips last time around at 47.9. Andres Mésa, you're looking at right now at 48.1. So Phillips is gradually pulling a bit of momentum over the Aston Martin drive. And then behind them, Prendergast were 48.2 last time around. But he does have the spectre, of course, of the 15-second time penalty for the contact with Faulkner on lap 1, turn 2 to worry about as he makes his way through the second chicane. He will have to burn that, and we will see him drop down the order somewhat after his pit stop. Pieringer, meanwhile, I can tell you that Pieringer right now is gradually being reeled in by P5 man Gaz Williams as they make their way for the first of 2 Lesmos. What's that reeling rate? It is 0.2 of a second a lap right now. Pieringer last time out at 48.9. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams, who you're looking at on screen very shortly, the Bentley driver here on his debut, a 48.7. Williams is flying right now in the top 5 situation, and he's looking to get that P4 off of Pieringer in the near future. Meanwhile, Paco Lara having a run off there. We did see briefly coming out of what was the second Lesbo. He's got a sizable gap to the guys ahead and the guys behind, and Lucas Seedor, who's behind him, of course. Seedor dropping all the way down the order after what was expected to be a good race of Seedor. He's a whole lap down our leaders right now. You have to imagine he's just got to dig deep and continue on his way right now, but we have got a long gap to what is Marcus Fox, who's the best part of 6.7 seconds off of Lara up ahead, but Emil Blaine is closing gradually right now, although the 2 last time around, in fact, Blaine lost 2 tenths, but Emil Blaine in P8 right now continuing to soldier up there and try to close the gap. But meanwhile, the closest drivers out on the circuit right now really are, it's the case that Tolera has just been able to eke out a little bit of gap versus Ulrich and Tran, and Tran has actually been passed by Martin Ulrich off camera. The M Technology driver has got ahead of Tran into P11, but look behind Daniel Tran right now. If we ride on board and look back, you could see the army of McLaren at 720s all want their shot at the AMG machine, and the Half-Life Racing driver's got one getting very close already after understeering into what was the final corner there, blocking up the brakes. We can see it's going to be Ticini looking for the move here versus the Swiss driver as he builds up the speed in the run down towards turns 1 and 2. We look to the helicam right now, and as they make their way into the braking zone here, it's Ticini on the outside, Tran on the inside. He blocks to the inside here, making sure that Ticini can't go all the way round, and as they all stagnate, oh goodness me, and Tolera there running off, and now we can see Ulrich going past him. Now, was there contact between the two of them? We didn't see that, but we can see that as a result of this, I think Tolera might have just got it wrong there, but look now at Tran. He wants to get past what is Tolera. He wants to find a way through, but it's, there's a bit of, oh goodness me, major contact there as Tran tapped the back of what was Tolera's car, and that, oh my good lord, and there's even more cars losing around circuit right now, as I believe that was Gareth Mills who's just had a spin, but fortunately kept it out the wall, just span on the grass there, but everybody being caught up there, and I think that was all because of a little bit of contact between Tran and the back of Tolera's car. I'm not 100% sure what happened there, ladies and gentlemen, but it is the case, multiple drivers having to watch out for a wayward Mercedes, and Mills, we just about kept it out the wall right now, but that has really flat spotted his tyres. He would have taken a huge chunk out of the tyres, and if there was any contact with the wall, we didn't see it. That could have really spelled a disaster for his race right now, as we see Maliar trying to close up, and then behind Will Velkoski in P16 right now. He's trying to close up to what is Maliar ahead of him, but he's got Brandon Warren 1.5 seconds back, and it is the case that this race is proving to be ever more dramatic. Now, with regards to potential penalties, we've got more work coming in from the stewards right now, ladies and gentlemen, and as soon as we hear anything, we will let you know. We can see that Nestor Major, that is, has picked up what is a 15-second penalty as he makes his way down. Now, why is that? You may be asking. For the number 8 car. It is for what is contact with car number 98, but he does give the position back further in the lap, so that's why it's been a 15-second penalty. It's been noted that he showed the respect here. On his debut, the contact was with car number 98, and that is the car of what was Christian Ablas, who's up into P22. So it's the case that for Major, he's not having the best of races today, but of course he will learn from this one, as we do see that is the wounded car of Daniel Tran making its way around right now. The Mercedes in a horrific state, and they're going to have to do a huge amount of work to repair that car. That was a horrendous incident, and indeed he will be looking to try and find a way to get back into the race later on if he can, but he's going to be the best part of a lap down the leaders, if not almost 2 laps down, as we see that Safaratos coming through to take P20 off of what is Daniel Tran there. But we look back up towards the front of the field. It is still Harry Phillips leading with 50 minutes to go right now versus Andres Mésa. So the gap between the two of them holding at 6 seconds as it currently stands. Phillips continuing just to eke out small little tidbits of a gap lap after lap right now. A tenth here, half a tenth there. But you can imagine it is the case that right now both drivers will be pushing it to the limit as they possibly can. And will Phillips be able to bring this one home? Or will we see what we saw at Brands Hatch where it all goes wrong in that second stint? Of course, for Phillips, he won't be hoping for that to happen, but for Mésa, he'll be hoping that he can have a stronger second stint, because right now it does look as though the tide is turning in the favour of Harry Phillips as they make their way onto what is their 15th tour of the Italian circuit. And Prendergast, meanwhile, with that 15-second penalty looming overhead. And we can see, meanwhile, it is the case that Piringer in P4, well, he's got a bit of space to Gaz Williams now. It's the case that Ralph has found himself a 1.2-second comfort gap to Williams, but Williams is staying there, and he is staying ever present. So the two of them are matching one another on lap times, lap after lap here. This is definitely a duel for P4 that we will not want to miss later on, because it is the fact that right now, Piringer under pressure from Williams. Despite Williams not having the best car for the circuit, you could argue, he is keeping that BMW driver honest, and Piringer knows it. Meanwhile, Paco Lara behind is just having to watch on right now from a lonely P6, it would seem. But I think for Lara, he will not be complaining if he finishes where he is right now. And to keep in mind, with that 15-second time penalty to Prendergast, who's 12 seconds up the road right now, we would expect that Lara would potentially jump ahead of Prendergast after the pit stops, and would then need to hold off Prendergast for the remaining time in the race when the pit stops have completed. But we will wait and see. But going from that a little bit further down right now, we've also got a 15-second penalty for Paul Scott. We'll come on to that very shortly. But we can see here Emil Blaine, and behind him, that's Walter Lux. And Lux has caught up 1.5 seconds on that previous lap. And Emil Blaine, I think, has had a poor run, because it's a 51.1 for Emil Blaine, our P8 man. And Lux, they're going a little bit slow. In fact, multiple drivers going sorry. Sylvain Pastoris almost losing it there on the exit of Lesmo 1. Everybody taking a lot of time and a lot of space off of the corner. And it does look as though that corner is starting to bite back quite a bit right now. As we can see, as they make their way through, we have got Marco Ticini here in P11. And we did have Victor Tolera ahead of these guys, but I think Tolera's had an off, because he is rejoined behind Affenstein and also Ticini, and he's dropped down to P13. Now, how will Tolera, of course, come back into this? That will be the big question as they make their way down towards turns 8, 9, and 10. That's a Ascari for you, and we're looking at Ticini right now as he makes his way through the sequence of corners here and comes all the way through and down towards Parabolic. And now, why have we got a time penalty for Paul Scott? Some of you may be asking. Our P23 driver, who you're looking at right now, the Optimum Motorsport driver. Well, that 15-second penalty for car 99 is due to gaining an unfair advantage for not slowing down for the incident, which were like car 21 as well. So there was an incident ahead and he did not slow down for it, and he gained an advantage over car 21, and therefore he's picked up the 15-second penalty for gaining the advantage when he shouldn't have. And car 21 is Andrei Zafratos, who we can see here, who's now ahead. And we can see Andres Mésa with a 5-second penalty, so it's not coming to a conclusion anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to stewarding. Now, what is this for? Because this could change the dynamic for who's on the podium. Well, Andres Mésa gets a 5-second penalty for a push to pass in the last turn, and that was between himself and Prendergast. Now, you'll remember a few laps ago, I think the Shoulds have had to really look at this one, because it's a major contentious one for the championship. You'll remember that Prendergast was flashing his lights on the exit of what was Parabolic, and we were wondering if there was a bit of door-to-door contact, and it does look as though the stewards have deemed it as a push to pass contact, and that's why Mesa's got the 5-second penalty, which he will need to serve in the pit. It's a light penalty, but it's a significant one, because this could really upset things for Mésa in terms of being able to hunt down Phillips in the long haul. But if Phillips was to have a poor stop or whatnot, it would give him a 5-second comfort gap right now, and Phillips has got all the momentum presiding in his favour. Now, in the weather forecast, in the next 30 minutes, we are hearing locally, we are not expecting any rain right now. It is the case, we are still expecting clouds. So this race is really starting to open up further down the field with regard to the strategy, and it's all because of the penalties and the instance earlier on in the race. As we do see a little bit behind that, I think that's Brandon Warren, who's just been able to find his way past Fabio Chiena as they make their way now out of what is the second Lesmo down Seraglio here. And as they come roaring down towards Ascari, we jump on board with Fabio Chiena as he tries to tuck him behind. And it's the case trying to gain on Warren. The Aston Martin driver here, of course, not going to have the strongest car for the circuit in terms of the straights. But Chiena, we do know, without qualified Warren, so we would expect he finds his way through as Warren goes a little bit wide there out to turn 10. And as he builds up the speed, what will the Tamiya Racing driver do? He pulls the race line. Warren goes defensive here, and he's going to try and hold to the inside. But will Chiena go all the way around as Ant Brown has got a drive-through penalty? So the penalties do keep coming in. And as we make our way now through at Parabolic and onto what is the conclusion of lap number 15, for lap 16 for these guys, onto lap 17, you can see Warren losing out massively there in the stakes. And I think it's the case that right now Fabio Chiena just getting the overspeed here in the run down towards turn 1. The American on the inside, Kieran on the outside here as they make their way in, and Kieran has got himself out ahead there. Brandon Moore not able to respond. The VRS Satellite Racing driver tucks in and falls down to P16 as they make their way through. Now, for those of you wondering what's happened to the Code Brown Racing driver who's got that drive-through penalty, it is for hitting the rear of car 273 on lap 7 at turn 1, causing them to spin off and gaining the position. And car 273, who is that? That is Martin Pafusen, who is in the pits. I think it is the case. Yep, they've parked up the car. He is currently taking a pit stop, the SKM AMG driver. We have had one retirement from this race. We still have 29 drivers running, but right now our leader is Harry Phillips, holding on to that lead. He's got a gap of 7.7 seconds, and remember that Andres Mésa and Prendergast do have time penalties when they take their pit stops. But meanwhile, further down the order, we can see that Gaz Williams in that major duel for P4 right now. We've got Piringer there in P4, Williams in P5, and the two of them getting ever closer. And Williams on that last lap of 48.672, Piringer of 48.624. These two are exchanging lap times as if it's going out of fashion right now, because they are doing it every single lap, and it's fantastic to see both drivers right on the threshold here. And you can imagine that the BMW, where it gains on the straights, Williams is making up for it in the corners, and that is the offset between the two cars right now as they both make their way through Curva Grande here, through turn 3 and up towards what is the Regia chicane at turns 4 and 5 as they roar all the way up. Now, a little bit further down the field, what we can see is that Marcus Fox is being reeled in by Emil Blaine. That last lap from Fox, a 49.5, Blaine a 49.0. So Blaine is starting to get a bit closer to the Austrian driver in the Porsche there, and Blaine doing everything he can right now to close up. Of course, these drivers have yet to take their pit stops, so you can imagine that when they do take their pit stops, the strategy will play a major quotient factor into the racing. But as they come through here and now make their way up towards what is Lesmo 1, Blaine definitely looking as though he's closing on Fox very gradually here. Perhaps Fox is just starting to get towards the end of his comfort on this opening stint. Perhaps we'll expect an early stop from Fox in the near future, but Blaine definitely getting closer lap on lap and corner by corner right now as they both make their way out of the second Lesmo here. And we ride on board with Emil Blaine as he makes his way roaring down towards what is the Ascari chicane here. And you can see he'll be building up the speed, of course, in the Aston Martin on the straights, as well as a slight advantage over the Porsche as they make their way through the left-hander of turn 8 before going up onto the raised curve at turn number 9 and then concluding Ascari with the run over turn 10. But of course, oh goodness me, and Fox there running wide out at turn number 10. Now that is of course going to put dirt on the tyres and also cause him to most likely pick up a track limits warning. If he gets too many of those, we can be expecting a potential stop and go penalty for Fox, or indeed just a time penalty being added. So Fox has got to be careful right now, and Blaine just focusing on that consistency as he chases after the P7 man right now as they make their way through Parabolica to complete their 18th lap and move on to lap number 19. But I think Blaine's going to be there within the next couple of laps. As we can see, Fox 0.6 of a second slower on that lap with the runoff, and you can see now he's responding by weaving a little bit on the straight as much as he's allowed to stop Blaine from gaining that slipstream. Fox is very wary of the fact that Blaine is gaining very rapidly on him and does not want him to gain too much on the straight. He'll be vulnerable into turn 1 with the Aston Martin's raw V8 power being able to outrun the Porsche ahead as they make their way through Curva Grande here. As they come through that right-hander, you can see just how much Blaine is closing up lap on lap right now as they come roaring up towards Regia once again. Now, as they come all the way up towards what is turn number 4 here, it's the continuation as we look back from what is Marcus Fox's car, and it is that situation where for Fox right now, he just needs to focus on keeping it together and not making any mistakes, because that's what Blaine's going to be looking to capitalise on. He'll be looking for the Porsche driver just to get one little bit of sideways motion on that rear end, which costs him the ability to get on the throttle, and then the Aston Martin driver can attack. But as you can see, as Blaine's got closer and he's got deeper into that dirty air zone behind Fox's car, now he's starting to fall back a little bit in the second sector, because that's where you need the clear air. You can't afford to be in dirty air through the Lesbos, and it may be the same here in the run down through Ascari. It may be that Blaine just has to back the car off a tiny bit because he hasn't got the downforce he would like to have on the car. And you can see that he's gone a bit wide of the apex of turn 9. That cost him about half a tenth. It's not much, but it does cost him a small amount of time as they now make their way down towards Parabolica, and Fox continues to do a little bit of dicey weaving here, and you can see Blaine flashing his lights, I think to try and get the message through. Look, don't weave, but I'm not going to attack you yet, or trying to get in his mind as well. As we can see, Fox has gone deep through Parabolica. This is Blaine's opportunity. If he's been looking for one, this is the time. It's been sold to him, and now he's got to go for it here in the long run down towards the opening chicane. Down towards Retfilo they go, onto lap number 20 here. This is the battle for P7, and you can see Fox that time around 4/10 start. Blaine inching ever closer. He's going to look for on the inside versus Fox. They're going to the heavy braking zone here, and who's going to be the bolder on the brakes? They're both about the same time, but Blaine with the overspeed. They go through the corner. They continue to be side by side. Blaine gives Fox the room as they make their way around. It is the case that Blaine moves up to P7, or does he? As now Fox tries to out-drag the Aston Martin in the Porsche as they make their way through Curva Grande, but he's got a long way round to go here. Can he hold the position on the inside up into what is Regia? It looks as though he hasn't been able to find it, but now he tucks back in. Will he be able to outbrake Blaine and use the slipstream to his advantage? It doesn't look as though, as Blaine nails his brain, when Fox nails his brain, when Emil Blaine up into P7, at Fox down to P8 with just one little error. But as they now make their way up towards the first two Lesbos here, you can see in the rear of your picture there, you've got Walter Lux, who's got a nice amount of space here, to Ulrich, who's 2.4 seconds behind, and Sylvain Pastorius separates the two of them. He's a lap down, of course, and I think it might be the case of an Audi racing driver. He might be ruining what was a potential opportunity of finishing a bit higher up so far, but you can see, and now Ulrich trying to find his way past the drivers a lap down. The blue flags are out as well as they make their way all the way down towards what is Ascari here, and we do see the fact that is the case that Pastorius, moves out the way. As we look back towards Blaine and Fox right now, Blaine starting to eke that gap out here and just keep the gap and hold on to that P7. A bit further down, meanwhile, we can see that Brandon Warren right now has got Gareth Mills behind him. Mills, of course, a lap down after that major incident earlier on involving himself, Daniel Tran, and a number of other drivers. As we can see now, he is a lap down. He's taking his pit stop, however. Brandon Warren has yet to take his pit stop. We've got a stop and go 30-second penalty for Tolera. I would presume that's for track limits, because we're not seeing anything in our stewarding report to say that he is due one, but we have got some more penalties coming, ladies and gentlemen. We are not done with penalties. There have been a lot of incidents, and you can see Mills getting frustrated there behind Warren. He just wants to get past Warren. Of course, he's a lap down, Mills. Now, if you're wondering, okay, in this scenario, how does it work when the back marker's the faster driver? Well, what the back marker's got to effectively do, because they will be blue flags as soon as they get ahead, they've got to show to the driver ahead of them, who is on the lap ahead, the lead lap, but they're slower. They've got to prove to them, look, I'm all over your rear end, I'm faster than you, let me through and let me break away from you. And that's what I think Warren's doing, as Warren comes into the pits here for his scheduled stop at the halfway point in the race. That releases Mills, and perhaps that's why he didn't want to let Mills through immediately, because he was going to pit. And as we go past the halfway mark right now, everyone will be keeping their head down as much as possible. Our top 5 have yet to pit, but what I can tell you is in the hunt for what is P4, Gaz Williams has dropped back a little bit to Piringa. He's lost out by half a second. It's now 1.6 seconds the gap, but still, there's a long way to go. And these two, if either one of them gets it right or wrong in the pit stop, you can imagine they could change places, or on top of that as well, it could be the case that we see them come out right on top of one another. We will wait and see. As into the pits, it comes Harry Phillips here. Andres Mésa continues around, and I think Kieran Prendergast is going to do the same. Yet they both do the same, but Phillips is the first one to call time on his opening stint here, as it's now Andres Mésa who takes the lead. But remember, he does have that 5-second time penalty to serve in the pits, and Prendergast, who stays out, as a 15-second time penalty to serve as well, as they make their way through once again here. We've also got Paco Lara coming into the pits here. The Spaniard making his way in from P6, and that will release Emil Blaine, who has got Marcus Fox, who's starting to come back at him a little bit. Now, I do wonder if Blaine's coming in. Well, it's the case that Blaine's coming in, and Fox is released back up into P7, as behind them, you've got Walter Lux here with Ulrich chasing after him, Martin Ulrich, as they make their way down. And Ulrich is into the pits, in fact, so we are seeing a lot of our battles. Drivers are splitting strategies here, and as a result, this should really make things dicey. A good number of drivers going for the halfway point pit, whereas others are deciding to pit later on in the race. And will the undercut work to their advantage, or is it the case that some drivers are having to take on a fresh pair of tyres and go racing with an extended stop? As we do see Arena Affenstein, meanwhile, in P8 now, the TUG Racing Esport driver holding on to that position with everybody making their pit stops. He's yet to pit, of course, and Max Maliar up into P9, but remember, he is due a pit stop. But I think for Maliar right now, he'll be thinking to himself, hey, I'm up in the top 10 like my teammate, this is great news. And as as a result, Maliar right now will be a bit buoyant by that, and that may push him on just to keep digging a little bit deeper, as we do see Fabio Chiena there chasing after him, and Velkoski at the rear of your picture a bit further back. Velkoski, of course, in the Porsche, and what we've always said about the back-to-motion driver, as we said in the build-up, is that he's the driver you will see gradually make his way through the field in the race. He's P11 now, yet to pit, of course, so we will expect some pit stops to play into this, but it will be the case that Velkoski right now, by going deep, could gain some more places, particularly by not picking up penalties where everybody else has been picking up penalties quite significantly, as we wait and see how it plays out for the German driver. Now, much further down in the order, we can see now that he's got the car repaired, Daniel Tran, the Half-Life Racing driver here, he has got just behind him, that's Eduardo Tripiano, who's trying to get the move on Tran. They're battling for P25, and as Tran makes his way across that timeline right now with 35 minutes to go here, it was looking good, but now it's the case that he's got it all to do again as he makes his way charging down towards what is turn number 1. Victor Tolera just ahead of him, 2.3 seconds ahead, and Tolera with what is a 15-second penalty, and it's just not going well for the driver, number 52 car, and that is cutting across the front of the 530 car as they lose one position to the offender car plus another to the drive behind. And that was the instant we saw with Daniel, I believe it, well, not Daniel Tran, my apologies, the 530 car. That would have been the car of, it was the car of Walter Lux. So we saw that earlier, and that's what kicked off the big battle for what, as the time, it was P9, and Emil Blaine came through all of that and found his way through with the Moses manoeuvre into turn number 1. And Tolera having a bit of a disaster today, as Lucas Seedorf also a 10-second penalty there. Now, why has Seedorf got that penalty, you may be asking at this point? Well, he's got that 10-second penalty. I believe the number 199 car is for making contact with a blue flag car, which could have been easily avoidable, and that was with the number 266 car, as it's been stated in my ears, and that is the car of Paco Lara, who's now in P12. But as we check in the chat right now, we can see there we've got Tenured Frog saying hello in the Twitch chat. Good evening to you, Frog. But this race has opened up a little bit with respect to everything that's happening right now, and I think it's more devolving into the strategic element as it currently stands. But still, plenty of racing ahead, and to give you an idea of some of the racing that's coming up, well, we've got Zafaratos here, who has yet to pit in P14. He's got Ulrich, who's come out just behind him after pitting, and Ulrich would love to find a way past the Frenchman very soon as Zafaratos continues around right now. No sign of pitting for the time being. We're also checking our boards with regards to our leaders. Harry Phillips has come out in P7, it should be pointed out right now, ladies and gentlemen, and he has come out behind everybody who is effectively yet to pit, so he has not got anybody who's already pitted ahead of him, as we are to understand it. And Zafaratos here, I think, will be wondering whether he's going to go defensive versus Ulrich. Particularly Ulrich will be thinking about that. Will he see the Frenchman go defensive, or will he just simply let Ulrich through and recognise that they're not in the same race? As you see Ulrich gaining massively under braking there into Regia, and as they come through turns 4 and 5 here, behind them, that is Andres Mésa, our leader, who will be asking them to move out the way soon. Will the blue flags do? Oh, goodness me! And Zafaratos, I think there was contact there, because Zafaratos seemed to just get knocked on the rear end and go wide as Andres Mésa comes through, and now we can see just behind him, and that is Magia behind, and then Prendergast also catch up as they come up through the second Lesbo here. I think it could be the case that for what is Ulrich, he may be hearing a word from the stewards in his ear very shortly, if that was contact indeed, and it wasn't Zafaratos making the mistake as they come charging down towards what is Ascari for, in their instance, for Ulrich in particular, the 23rd time of asking. Our leaders a lap ahead, of course, as they make their way through. Prendergast tucking up to the back here of Ulrich, and will be soon getting his lights on to say, Ulrich, if you could politely do the honours and move off the racing line, we'd appreciate it. And you can see, in fact, that Prendergast carrying a lot more momentum through and coming through on his inside already. But further down, we're hearing that Pafusen is not able to get the car out of the pit, so it is the case that we've only got 28 drivers, I think we've got 27 drivers still racing. I think we've also lost even Faulkner out, so we've lost Faulkner, so we are down to 27 drivers as it currently stands, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, Faulkner's car experiencing technical issues and needing to retire. So it's the case that Faulkner will not be continuing his consistent form of finishing in that top 5 today, as Ablasa right now makes his way around in P17. And behind we have got Brandon Warren there in what is a side-by-side with Victor Tolera, and indeed Tolera having to move out of the way as Warren is on the lead lap, well, not on the lead lap, a lap ahead of these guys, I should say, as they make their way across that timeline. But it's the case that Tolera not backing out of this, because he's conscious of the fact he's got Daniel Tran behind him, and Tran is battling with Tolera for position in the battle for P24, and Warren, I think, is going to get bit frustrated at this because he should have been let through by now, and you can see it's all concerted together here, and Warren's having to try and find a way to snap back as we see that Tran, meanwhile, has got Warren between him and Tolera, and now Tolera moves off to what is the outside through Curva Grande here, and Warren's going to go around the what is the inside to outside line here up into Regia. Now, will he be able to make it through, as we do see that Tolera looks for potential on the inside, but instead he tucks in the end. He was going defensive to make sure Tran couldn't get that inside line at short notice. So that's how it's changed in the end. But Warren, I think, will be a little bit frustrated because just up the road is Christian Ablasa, and then Ticini only 5.5 seconds up the road, and he would have loved a bit of time back there. He would not have wanted to have lost that time as they make their way through the first Lesmo. 30 minutes to go, and it's all still to play for a good number of drivers here in terms of potential results. As we look up towards our race leader right now, when are our top two going to pit? Of course, that's the big thing. Well, our top four really, because none of them are pitted as of yet, and we do see that right now Williams starting to fall back from Piringer. The gap open up to 2.3 seconds as it currently stands. The Briton versus the German here, the Bentley versus the BMW. You couldn't ask for more national combinations or flags as they make their way down towards what is Parabolica once again here, and they are both due that all-important pit stop. Meanwhile, who was our race leader before he pitted, Harry Phillips, he's in P7 right now, and as we said earlier, he has only got drivers ahead of him who have yet to pit, so Walter Lux and Marcus Fox, the first two up the road. But before that, he does have Sylvain Pastorius, who is a lap down, and he's closing on Pastorius gradually here as Phillips is continuing to put in the laps. 48.4 was his last lap. Our race leader, 48.1 from Andres Mésa as they make their way through it. We can see that it's the case. It does look as though Daniel Tran's had a bit of an off there because he has dropped back, and he's now battling with Pastorius here. And as we look at Daniel Tran, it's the case. Pastorius has got a... Well, no, Pastorius is a lap down. My apologies there, ladies and gentlemen. So I think Tran may have lost out. I think there's been an instant through a scar or something's gone wrong for Tran. And as a result, now he is well down in the hunt for what was P25 and P24 versus Tolera and Tripiana. Tripiana closing up to Tolera gradually here as they make their way up through Curva Grande once again. And now Tripiana, the Spaniard, will have to try and find a way past Tolera. As we look a little bit further up the order in terms of positions, I can tell you that as it currently stands, Ticini, and meanwhile trying to hunt down what is Zafaratos. Zafaratos just went through our camera there in what is P15 at 2.3 seconds up the road. Ticini in P16, he's got a lot of drivers ahead of him who have yet to pit, it should be pointed out. So as a result, for Ticini, he just needs to keep putting in the laps and not have the runoffs such as what he's just had there at Lesmo 2, and he could be looking at finishing within the top 10 as it currently stands. Now, one driver who we are wondering where he's going to play out in all this is Emil Blaine. He has pitted, he's in P13. He's the best part on Paco Lara, 11.6 seconds down, but a lot of the drivers he was battling with have yet to pit, and that includes the likes of what we would say is Rainer Effenstedt. We've also got Fabio Kenner, Walter Lux, and Marcus Fox in the mix, so we'll be interested to see how they play. We're still waiting to see when they're going to pit, but look at Fox here. He has been caught up by Lux significantly, and as they make their way down Seraglio and head up towards Ascari right now, you can imagine that Fox is having a very difficult time in the Porsche. Lux last time around at 49.5, Fox at 49.8, so it's the case, much like with Blaine versus Fox, it does seem as though Fox just does not have the pace compared to Lux as they make their way down towards Parabolica, and we ride on board here with what is the McLaren 720S of Lux as they make their way down towards Parabolica. They look for the potential move here, does Lux, but the Austrian can't find a way through. He's too far back here. These two, of course, fellow countrymen, they'll know one another quite well down the paddock, and as they make their way through the right-hander here and go on to what is going to be their 27th lap, will we see one of them dive into the pit? No, they both stay out once again here as we listen to the roar of the McLaren as it makes its way up behind Fox. Now, of course, Fox doing the little wheeze from left to right. He's allowed to do one or two of those, but doing too many, of course, that we can see would be dangerous driving. But as they make their way into that braking zone, you can see Fox going very deep on the brakes, and I think Fox might be cooking his brakes too hard by doing so, because we saw that down at Parabolica when Blaine was able to get the momentum. It was the case that Fox just went a little deep on the braking point, and as a result, he couldn't get the car stopped. But as they make their way through, we're still looking at our times because we've got Fabio Chiesa in from what was P9 at the time. He's going to drop down the order. We'll wait and see where he comes out. But looking back to the battle between Fox and Lux right now, neither driver able to gain the advantage on the other so far, but Lux definitely looking the stronger of the two as we see Harry Phillips is closing up to the pair of them. Now, what Phillips will be hoping is that these two either clear one another or both pit soon. He cannot afford for them to be battling one another ahead of him, because he will need to find his way past a pair of them because they are effectively ahead of him on circuit right now, despite the fact they've yet to pit. And that for Phillips would be a disaster, because that could afford the likes of Mésa, Prendergast, Piringer and Williams the time they need to to reel him in as they make their way down Seraglio right now. 26 minutes remaining here. We've still got a good number of pit stops to go. Kiena's in P11 currently in the pits from what I'm gathering down in the paddock looking out the window right now. But meanwhile, as they make their way through Ascari, you can see Fox under huge pressure as we ride on board here with a Porsche 911 driver. You can just see how the fact he has not got that confidence through Ascari compared to Lux. And it was the same with Blake. He just doesn't seem to have the car in a place where he wants it to be right now. And this is such an uncomfortable position because it means that Lux can put him under so much pressure. And if Fox makes one mistake, it could be doom and gloom. And as you can see that he did lock up under braking a little bit. And I think it might be the case that the front brakes are just not giving him the braking force he wants. He's having to try and force the car to stop on corners. As we do see that Lux is getting closer and closer. And he looks to the inside as we jump to the helicam. They go on to lap number 28 here. Gaz Williams is into the pit. So these guys are battling for P4 and circuit right now. It's Lux on the inside and the McLaren. Fox on the outside. They're going to the brakes and Fox is squeezed to the minimum possible track room he's permitted. Lux goes a bit deep through turn 1, but he's able to keep it together through turn 2. Fox tucks in behind. He's not able to find the run. And as they make their way onto Curva Grande, you can see Fox is looking to snap back to the inside, but Lux blocks it off in the end. And Fox recognises he hasn't got the momentum, so he tucks in for a small sniff of slipstream as they then make their way up towards what is Regia. And as they charge all the way down towards the heavy braking zone, you can see Fox just does not have the ability to come back. And look at that now. Harry Phillips is all over the back of these two, and he will be thinking to himself right now, oh my dear Lord, I've got to find a way past the pair of them, and soon. Now, of course, if Lux is able to break away from Fox, this may make Phillips's objective a little bit easier for the simple reason he can snip them off one at a time if they choose to fight him. But you can see that right now Fox does not want to go anywhere because he's getting the distant toe off the back of Lux. But as Phillips makes his way in, tucked in behind, the helicam providing us the perspective of all three as they make their way down Seraglio and head up towards Ascari. 24 minutes to go. Our leader is into the pits. I can tell you that Andres Mésa is into the pits. Kieran Prendergast continues out there, and it's the case that Fox goes deep. It's the case that Phillips has got to be very careful as he squeezes his way around the outside to inside for Ascari. That could have been very dangerous for the pair of them as they make their way racing once again, but Fox makes the mistake. Phillips gains the place, and now he's got to hunt down Lux. And meanwhile, with Andres Mésa in the pits, he's currently in his pit box here. Where is he going to come out? He's serving that 5-second penalty as well. He's going to clear that penalty with 24 minutes to go. Will Mésa be able to come out close to Phillips? Will he come out ahead? That is the big question as we see Phillips makes his way across the complete lap number 28 to go on to lap number 29. Is Mésa coming out the pits right now? He's not coming out the pits, we believe. No, he's still in that pit box, and I believe it's the case that Andres Mésa is now leaving. If he did not have that 5-second penalty, he would have come out alongside, if not ahead of Phillips. And that is how much that 5-second penalty has cost him. It has cost him literally the chance to be side by side down into the opening chicane, because the gap between them is exactly 5 seconds as they came into that braking zone. And that is how one penalty can upset the flow of a race, because Mésa gained by going long, whereas Phillips lost out by tucking in behind what was Lux and Fox. And now he's going to have to hunt down Lux and get past him as soon as possible here, because he cannot afford to lose any more time, can Phillips, and he will be very conscious of that right now. He knows that Mésa's going to come on strong in this second stint. He will see Phillips up the road, and he will see only one thing: that man needs to finish behind me. Much like he said at Brands Hatch, he does not want to see the rear end of that Bentley. He wants that Bentley to see the rear end of his Aston Martin as they make their way around on lap number 29. Now, meanwhile, our race leader Prendergast with a 15-second penalty, which he will need to take for that instant on lap number 1, turn 1, as he knocks the bollard flying there. And I think he did throw us a little bit of a duplex with regards to potentially going into the pit. And Prendergast almost selling us for a pit stop there, as meanwhile, Piringer, it should be pointed out, is staying out for the time being. Now, where is Gaz Williams in all of this? That's the question we've got to be asking. Well, Williams right now is making his way through the right-hander of the second Lesmo. That's turn 7. And as they continue around, we can see the track temperature has dropped by a degree centigrade. We're not expecting any rain within the next half an hour, so this is going to be a dry race from start to finish. But for Williams, he has got clear track in front of him once he passes Pastoris. And as a result for him, it could be the case right now, by going early, he will gain on what is Piringer. We will wait and see, of course, because this is the battle between the two drivers. They're distant on circuit, but that's because of the strategy. This is the battle for P4. And you've got Max Maliar just behind him, P9 right now. He's yet to pit as well, as we have got all the pit stops now starting to play out. And we will wait and see how the remaining pit stops are going to factor into this. But we will wait and know with Maliar in particular, he's gone very long and just kept it nice and clean where he can, and this could be a very solid result for Maliar if he's able to keep it together right now. Further down the field, I can tell you that we do have Sylvain Pastoris into pits. He's multiple laps down right now in what is that P27 position. In fact, he's coming in now, and I do think that Ferrari has seen the wars day, the Rinaldi Racing team, as it does look as though Perfusion's car, they can't get it back out on circuits. That is a fully confirmed retirement. But looking a little bit further up, we can see Zafar Atos here back in P22 after his pit stop, and he is hunting down the likes right now of Ant Brown, who is 20 seconds up the road and has already pitted. So I think for Zafar Atos, he's just got to focus on trying to keep it together and not making any mistakes or running wide like he almost did there out of Parabolica. Otherwise, that might be a penalty to add to his collection of moments today as he makes his way down towards turn number. Of course, positive moments as well as negative moments, but he won't want a negative moment as we look back towards our leader right now, who's just behind him. Kieran Prendergast right now putting in lap after lap. We're just not able to shake off that feeling of that 15-second penalty, I'm sure. In that cockpit right now, it's going to be one of those ones where he's probably thinking to himself, if it weren't for that penalty, he could be leading this one or definitely finishing on that podium. We will wait to see, of course, how it's going to play out when he comes to the very end. 20 minutes remaining in this race. And to give you a comparison with regards to Piringer versus Williams, now some laps are coming in. That last lap, Piringer a 48.5. Williams, it was a 50.1. I think Williams is going to lose out here in the pit stop unless Piringer has a really slow stop. We will wait and see as we check in the chat and Facebook there. Matt Evans tuning in. It's so good to hear that voice again. It's great to hear from you, Matt, as well. And glad to hear you're enjoying what is happening here today at Monza as our drivers are continuing to proceed. It's 20 minutes remaining. We're still counting down. And indeed, whilst it could be the case that this race is wrapped up to a degree, Lux has just been passed by Phillips, I should point out, in the run down towards turn 1 on lap number 31. So Lux not fighting Phillips. He knows he's not in a race with Phillips. He's in a race with Fox behind him. But Phillips right now on course, we believe, to retake the lead when both Piringer and Prendergast pit. But let's look out for Andres Mésa. Last time around, Harry Phillips a 49.1, Andres Mésa a 48.9. I do not think right now, as we've got a car spun there, I believe that is the car of what is, well, I'm not 100% sure, we're just waiting for it to rejoin, and that is the car of Tolera there that's just rejoined ahead of them, and Tolera having a disastrous day at the office as Phillips now has to try and find a way past the back mark, who should just see the blue flags very shortly. But unless it's the case that Phillips is held up or makes a significant error later in the lap, right now we are expecting that it's one of those situations where Mésa just has to keep pushing. You can see him in the rear of your camera shot there, Andres Mésa, in who is P6 right now, but it's effectively in his mind P2, assuming all the pit stops play out as he would expect them to. But the Spaniard would love to get as close as possible to Phillips and this time seal the deal for the win in the battle with Phillips and hopefully become the first repeated winner. Remember, going into tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we had not seen a repeated winner. We have had 3 different winners in 3 races. I think tonight we may be seeing our first repeat winner, and as a result that's either going to be Mésa or Phillips, and it's looking like it's Phillips as it currently stands. But still, anything can happen in the remaining 18 minutes. You won't want to go anywhere because anything can happen at Monza. Monza's one of those circuits where it could all kick off. Kieran Prendergast is into the pits, it should be pointed out, and in fact Prendergast, I believe we have had a retirement of Prendergast. We have lost Prendergast out on circuit, and that would mean that we have lost another try. Prendergast was still on for a potential top 5, so I think the car's probably had some technical issues, but we've lost Prendergast. I'm hearing they put the car into the garage. Something has gone very wrong with the Ferrari, the American Ferrari, and that takes him out of contention here. So we are going to see most likely a different podium finisher today, and that is going to be something now which the likes of Piringer, Fox, Lux, and also Everstate and Williams will all be trying to get into. As we can see, Andres Mésa now closing up to the back of Fox here in the hunt for P3 out on circuit. But for how long? As we know, Lux has pitted, Lux is coming to the pits, and how long will Fox go as he makes his way through the chicane? We can see a car going wide off circuit there. That is Christian Ablasser running off of Regia, and as they make their way through here, he is a lap ahead of Tolera, but he is of course a lap down on both Fox and also Mésa as they make their way through here. And you can see the traffic build up here. And it is the case that both drivers, as oh goodness me, and and this is not going to be good reading for either driver there, as we see Mésa just makes it through before contact could occur. Now, for those wondering what happened there, Ablas has got a damaged car, that I'm sure, and it was the case that Tolera moved out of the way for the blue flags, but he got tapped on the rear by Ablas, who didn't expect Tolera to move out of the way so suddenly in the run between Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2. So both drivers tripping over one another, and Mésa almost getting caught in the rear side panel there through Lesmo 2. Fortunate not to, as he hunts down Fox here, and how long will Fox go before he pits? Well, it's the case that right now I think surely that Fox has got to look at coming into the pit soon, because he's losing so much time by being in these traffic jams right now, and he's really doing this to simply overcut Lux and try and gain some time on Lux by running in clear air. But I think Lux right now has gained the better end of the story as they make their way through Parabolic here, and you can see that Mésa just trying to find a way past Fox at the time. I think he's staying in the slipstream to get the run all the way down towards Reptilio as they make their way across that timeline. Onto lap 33 they go, and I have definitely just had that confirmation here. We have had a retirement from Kieran Prendergast, who was leading, but due to pit, he's had to pull the car into the pits, and the car has been put into the garage. That is a disaster, and that's going to really torpedo his chances of being well up there in the top 3 of the championship come the end of this race. As we see in the rear view picture, that's Ablasser going very deep in the rear view picture. Our driver in P17 right now, but he's got it back together, and Solera is being hunted down by Chris McKenna. Both drivers with 15-second penalties to their names, for instance, as they make their way through Curva Grande here for what is, in their perspective, the 31st time of Ask Him. Now, whilst they do so here, we look a little bit further down the order, and what we can see is Waterlux has come out ahead of Emil Blaine here. So Blaine, who was inching towards Waterlux earlier on, he's still behind Lux after the pit stops. Blaine at 3.2 seconds back. Could we expect the two of them to come together come at the end of this race? Well, we'll wait until Lux goes around for one more lap to see what his indicative lap time is right now, but Blaine is keeping that gap stable at 3.2, 3.3. So it could happen, and if it does, we would expect some sparks to fly, because for Blaine right now, he would be on course, assuming everything plays out, to have his best finish of the season so far, all through keeping it consistent. Remember, for Emil Blaine, who's currently P9, what are the fact that we have had the pit stop from Piringer, who he's come, well, hold on a second, and Piringer's a lap ahead. My apologies there, folks. I was going to say, Piringer can't have dropped that far down the order. We've got Harry Phillips coming along right now. Can Piringer find a way to get up into that top 3 fight as we wait for Fox to go into the pits as well? And we've got, I believe that's Ticini getting past Trippiano there. Trippiano with the blue flags, a lap down Ticini. But as Phillips makes his way around right now, he's going to retake the lead as he comes across that timeline to go on to lap number 34. Meanwhile, we've got Andres Mésa here in what is P3. He's going to take back P2 as he comes across that timeline, we believe, as Piringer coming out of the pits, and Piringer, look at how much Piringer's closed up. Of course, Andres Mésa had that 5-second time penalty, but Piringer here comes out. He's got Marcus Fox just ahead of him, but Fox is yet to pit and will need to pit shortly. But Piringer here has cleared what is Gaz Williams for the battle for effectively P3 out on circuit. And for Williams right now, who is the best part of 19 seconds down on Piringer, this means that Piringer could potentially be looking at coasting now to a P3, and that would be fantastic for the BMW driver, as we see a Williams coming all the way down into what is the turns number 1 and 2. He's got 13.5 minutes to go. Can he close up to Piringer? That's the question. He's got a long way to go right now. And meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that Paco Lara is holding on to that P7. We would expect that when Maliar and also Fox pit, that Lara's going to be coming back into the top 5. But we will wait and see how that does play out. Lara right now putting in a solid effort, although a little bit high there on the Opitz curve of turn 1, unsettling the car, and Waterlux behind and closing quite rapidly. In fact, Waterlux, to give you an idea, just took 1.5 seconds out of Lara on that last lap alone, and with 13 minutes remaining and the lap time here just being shy of 2 minutes, they've got approximately 7 more laps of racing to go, and if Lux carries on at this rate, or even half that rate, he'll be all over the back of Lara come the end of this race, and that is going to be something that we'll need to keep our eyes on, as things really have opened up with regards to the field right now, and it's waited to see how people potentially concertina back together, as we do see there it's Printer in the YouTube chat tuning in, and it's very unfortunate with regards to the technical issues, Printer, but still we look forward to having you back in the next race as they make their way through the Lesmo corner. Does Lara and Lux behind, inching ever closer once again as they make their way through, but I think it might be the case that Lara's now starting to get the laps settled back down. Marcus Fox into the pits then, and this is going to release Piringer up into P3 for the time being. Now, where is Gaz Williams? Gaz Williams is coming through Parabolica, so he's going to definitely take P4 back off of Fox. And then the big question, we've got Maliar, who's yet to pit, and Max Maliar going extremely long. And indeed, this is probably one of the longest stints he's had at any circuit in this series so far. And Maliar's really put on a good display today so far, and I think he could be an outside shot of a top 10 here, or at least finishing in the top 15, and that would bring a massive smile to German's face. He was feeling, I can tell you folks. He was feeling very downbeat after the opening couple of rounds with nothing going his way whatsoever, whereas his teammates seem to have everything go right for him. But Maliar right now must be beaming from ear to ear because the way it's going for him, he's got to pit, but this is looking to be a season best finish as we do see Paco Lara has come through and he's alongside Fox, and Fox has just come out behind the Spaniard, and that is the weakness of the long stint. As we can see now, Lara has gained on Fox and is now going to go chasing after that top 5 finish. The next driver up the road, of course, is Maliar, who is yet to pit, so we would assume that Lara is going to get that P5, and can Fox come back? That's the big question. Or will it be the case that right now for the Porsche driver, he's gone a step too far and needs to focus on holding off Lux? Emil Blaine has dropped further back from Lux, I should point out. He's lost out a second on the last lap, so I think for Blaine it's going to be a P9 at best right now, but we will, well, sorry, P8 at best when Maliar pits, I should say. But we will wait and see how that plays out. Further down the order, we've got Martin Ulrich here in P10. And he's completing our top 10 right now. He's got a 9.1 second gap to Rainer Erfenstedt, who is our P11 driver. Erfenstedt here making his way through turn number 3. The TG Racing Esport driver, he's got a little bit of traffic ahead of him, but no major pressure on him. But we definitely do have the space out of the field right now. Robert Velkoski in P14, and he has got his mind on Brandon Warren, who's inching closer to him in the Nismo. We can see them making his way through turns 1 and 2 right now. But Velkoski has got that 3.7 second gap, which he can afford to play with. Both drivers have made the pit stops. Most of our drivers have now pitted. We only have one driver who has yet to pit, and that is the driver, of course, of Max Maliar. He's going to keep us guessing when he's going to come into the pit. Will he do it this time, or will he not? That's the big question. Well, as he makes his way around and we take a sip of water, will he come in? And I think he knows that the camera's being pointed on him there because he did that little dummy to the outside to inside there. But Maliar finally into the pits, and we will wait and see where this brings him out compared to the field. As Velkoski, meanwhile, we look back and we can see that Brandon Warren inching closer lap on lap. As he comes through the right-hander here of what is Lesmo 1 and through Seraglio, you can see that behind there we do have drivers on all different laps, and our race leader is just making his way past what is Magia right now as the Salvadorian moves off the racing line and lets Harry Phillips through, and Phillips continuing his way. And to give you a comparison of lap times, our race leader of Phillips last time around at 48.6, Andres Mésa at 48.4. Phillips is managing this one to the conclusion right now. The gap between the two of them, 4 seconds or just over, and I think for Phillips he just needs to focus on keeping it clean and as the best of his capabilities right now. As Maliar is coming out the pit, where has his long opening stint placed him? It's put him out in P11, and Fabio Kenner has just come out of what is Parabolic and down that timeline. You can see Kiena in the rear of your picture here, and for Maliar right now, he's only 4 seconds down on Erfenstedt. Could he potentially sneak into the top 10 here? Because the Porsche driver's not that far up the road, and it is the case that for Erfenstedt, his last lap of 50.2. Meanwhile, for Maliar, I believe he's been lapping similarly, so right now, if he could get a little bit more time out there on circuit within the remaining what is 4 to 5 laps most likely for the German, could he potentially snatch a top 10 here? And that would be a huge surprise. As Lucas Seedorf, meanwhile, in P13, he's got a 10-second penalty. We'll just try and find out for you why he's got that 10-second penalty, folks, but he's dropping further down after qualifying, a very good qualifying position. The second row, I believe it was P4. It's the case that the reason he has got what the penalty is for earlier on in the race, and I can't quite confirm as to, I found out why, ladies and gentlemen. It is for what was an incident with car number 266, and that was Paco Lara, and that was making contact with the blue flag car. So this was the penalty from much earlier on, which we did talk about. So that penalty has to be served at the end. Seedorf making that early pit stop after what was a difficult start, of course, for Seedorf. But he will be fighting back, of course, in the future races. There is no doubt about it. A man who can dig very deep, the VRS satellite racing driver, Lucas Seedorf, as he makes his way down towards Ascari. Looking a bit further down that order, we can see Paul Scott. Meanwhile, he's making his way down towards what is Regia here. He's got a 15-second penalty that applies at the end of the race. He's got Gaz Williams making his way through what is turns 4 and 5 right now. And as they come charging through, we can see it's the case that for Scott, he's just simply got to focus on keeping it together and not let that gap between himself and Ant Brown is 15 seconds down get closer than 15 seconds. Otherwise, he will lose the place come the end of the race. But meanwhile, what I can tell you, talking about losing places, Paco Lara is being reeled in right now by Marcus Fox. That last lap, 2 temps taken out, and Lara is continuing to be pressured. And we've got Walter Lux, who's behind them as well. We're looking at a potential three-way battle for P5 come the very end of this race right now. You can see P5, P6, and P7 all in a single camera shot there. They do have some back markers ahead of them. Gareth Mills the first one. Mills being 2 seconds up the road. He's at the foreground of your picture right now. But as they all come roaring out of the second Lesmo here, you do have to wonder what might be going through Lara's mind mind right now with regards to the fact that pressure is building from behind. Will that pressure erupt onto the rear of that McLaren come the end of it? However, 7 minutes to go. That's the best part of 3 more laps after this one, perhaps even a full flap. Lara just needs to try and keep it together as Fox has lost out a bit in the braking towards Ascari. In fact, Fox has lost out massively for Ascari. 3 tenths is a huge loss through there as they all come down towards Parabolica right now. And Lux, meanwhile, is continuing to close up on Fox here. And Lux is the fastest of the 3 of them, a second faster than Lara and 8 tenths of a second faster than Fox on that last lap. Now, did they all just have different laps and one had a special lap and one had a disastrous lap? We'll find out as they come across the timing line once again to complete their 37th tour of the circuit. And it will start off with Lara here. As Lara comes across the line, it was that time around a 49.9, and meanwhile for Fox a 50.1 and Lux a 49.2. Lux is definitely on course to try and take on P5 by the end of this. Now, how quickly can he get past Fox, or will Fox put up an immovable barrier? That will be the big question. 6 minutes remain. This is the battle for P5. Will he be able to find his way through? As we just take a quick look up the field, and we can see right now Harry Phillips cruising, as it would seem, towards the win. Only 5.5 minutes to go when he gets to Parabolica. He's got some traffic to clear. The gap to Andres Mésa has come down to 3.6 seconds. That last lap, Phillips lost 6 tenths to Mésa, but again, not too many laps to go. He can afford to back it off as long as he gets past the back markers, of course, as best as he possibly can. But that is something we'll wait and see. Piringer, meanwhile, comfortably in P3. He's got a 21.5 second gap to Williams in P4. Williams, meanwhile, has got a 23.5 second gap to Lara. And as we look at Lara right now, we can see Lara, Fox and Lux all in that picture once again, all where they were last time around, but Lux the fastest of the 3 of them, and bearing down on them rapidly. Blaine, Ulrich and Effenstedt all seem to be secured in the top 10 as Maliar's not closing up rapidly enough. Effenstedt and Maliar, Max Maliar in P11. The 2 of them trading times. We see Maliar in the rear of the picture there as they come through the chicane, and it is the case that right now we can see that Effenstedt not under that pressure for Maliar, just keeping the laps clean together. But Fabio Kenner definitely closing up to the back of Maliar right now. Closed up 3 tenths that last time around. Will we see a battle for P11 on our hands at the very end? That will be the big question between these 2. The same with Volkowski and Brandon Warren. Warren is closing up to Volkowski in the battle for P14 as they come through, and these 2 are separating the race leaders from one another right now. And of course, Harry Phillips will be hoping that it's the case that Mésa takes a bit of time to clear the pair of them and that they battle one another, and perhaps forget that Andres Mésa is coming through behind. But they're both very wary of blue flags. Volkowski and Warren, they do respect the blue flags as much as they possibly can. You see Andres Mésa pushing very hard right now and flashing his lights already to Warren to say, look, your time's up, let's move out the way please, as they make their way down towards Ascari. Meanwhile, race leader making his way through it there, and we look back to Paco Lara here, and you can see in the rear of your picture, and we now put him centre stage, it's Fox under that pressure from Lux. Lux getting close up, 4 minutes to go, 3 more laps including this one. And where will Fox go for the defence? Will he go early in towards the second chicane, or will it be the case that he's not worried about Lux here? You can see a Lux closing under brake, and I do wonder whether Fox is managing a brake problem on those front brakes. We saw it in the first stint where he had the difficulty with the brakes, and now as he makes his way through what is the right hand of the first Lesmo, he does seem to be struggling with that front brake retardation as he makes his way in towards turn number 7. That's a Lesmo 2 for those of you who want it in a name format. And as they make their way through it, we can see that Lux getting ever closer as we do ride on board with Walter Lux here. You can see just trying to find a way to inch ever closer, lap after lap. He's not been able to do it so far, but as they make their way up towards what is Ascari once again, you can see under braking, it's just a case that Fox just does not seem to be able to come off the brake as comfortably as Lux or the drivers around him, and that's enabling Lara to pull away as Fox goes a bit deep. Then you can see Lux deciding to pull off the race line, pull off the track to gain the toe off of Fox. He does not want to lose any potential straight line speed here as they make their way down towards Parabolica, and as they come into turn number 11, you can see, look at Fox, he just cannot get the car to stop properly on the corners. He's having to take siphon lines in, and this is an opportunity for Lux. He's going to be very close in the run out of Parabolica. They make their way across that timing line. They go on to what is lap number 40, and as we jump to the helicam, it's Lux on the inside, Fox on the outside here. We've seen it many a time before down into the Refilio chicane. Will Lux be clear as they go into the braking zone? It looks like he's ahead. He goes to the racing line. Fox comes off the racing line, looks back to the inside here, and I think Lux cut a bit prematurely to the racing line, but he holds the inside of turn 2, and as they make their way out, it doesn't look as though Fox has got a comeback here. Great great respectful racing chum between the two of them, definitely battling for that top 5 and the top 10 on a consistent basis, but right now Lux seems to have that edge in pace. Will it be the case that Fox is able to come back in the run up towards Regia? It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. If he's going to, it's going to be very late on the brakes and from very far back. It's not going to happen, and so they have changed places. Lux now up into P6. Oh, I say that, he's got it wrong out of the chicane, and Fox now comes back in on the inside here as they make their way through the right hand. There's contact as Fox goes a little bit deep. The brakes on that Porsche are struggling to get the car stopped, and as they make their way up into the second Lesmo right now, and the camera pans around. Come on, cameraman, turn it around. You can see it's the fact that Lux wants another shot of this. He's not happy that he's been repassed. He wants to try and get the place back. He wants to go after Lara, but Lara right now is 4 seconds up the road with these two fighting. They've only got one more lap after this, we believe, and as a result, as they come for Ascari, you can see Fox goes defensive. Lux tries for the cutback. Fox is still there, and as they now make their way through turn 10, it's the run up towards Parabolica. Meanwhile, further down, I can tell you that in the battle for what is P11, Maliar has got Fabio Chiena all over the back of him. This is for just outside the top 10, of course, and Maliar goes a bit high on the apex of turn at number 7. That's the second Lesmo, and now it's Chiena who's all over the back of him in the run down towards Ascari, and as they come down the Seraglio curve here, you can see Maliar going defensive. He does not want to lose any places, but Chiena's going to look to the inside very late on the brakes, but he's not able to find it and tucks back in behind. There's only going to be 1 or 2 more opportunities for these guys as they make their way through and head up towards Parabolica once again. Meanwhile, I can tell you our race leader, having cleared the track, Andres Mésa, is now 2.7 seconds back, but he is on his penultimate lap right now, and I think it is the case of Phillips. In fact, he might even be on his final lap here. We will wait and see as he comes all the way down. I think he's going to have one more lap here in just about as he makes his way towards Parabolica. Andres Mésa continuing to push after him as rapidly as possible, but there's just no way through for the time being, and in fact, I think this is going to be the final lap as he makes his way out of the final corner. It has been a dramatic race, but the one driver who has avoided the drama, it is Harry Phillips, who comes home to take the win in round number 4. Andres Mésa in with a 5-second penalty, missing out on the shot of the win, but comes home in P2 nonetheless. And Ralph Piringer, who would have thought it, P3, a return to the podium for the BMW as he makes his way across the line there. And Gaz Williams on his debut, the British driver, comes up to the final corner right now, and as he makes his way through the right-hander here, it's going to be the case that for Williams, it's going to be a brilliant debut, and he's absolutely shown his class as he comes across the line in P number 4. Great drive from Williams, and as he makes his way through, we've got a little way to go down to P5, but I can tell you that Fox is ahead of Lux as it currently stands. But before we can look at them, we have to look, of course, at Paco Lara, who with a top 5 finish, he has come on stronger, race in, race out, and as the Spaniard from Prototype Racing makes his way through the right-hander of Parabolica, it is going to be a top 5 finish from the McLaren 720 driver coming across that line in P5. A brilliant drive from Lara, and then in the battle for P6, Marcus Fox in the end holds on by looks like to take P6 by a hair's width ahead of Waterlux. A brilliant battle between these two, and Emil Blaine in P8, a brilliant drive from P18 from Emil Blaine. Ulrich in P9, lost out of place, but still happy with that, I would presume. And it's going to be Rainer Effenstedt who completes our top 10 as he comes through the right-hander here and comes around to complete his race as he makes his way around the Austrian driver right now. He'll be happy given how everything has played out today. You can see the damage on the front, that car, on the dirt and the pickup. But he comes across in P10. And then Max Maliar comes home in P11. He held off the charge from Chiena in the end. It's going to be Lucas Sidor who finishes P12, but due to that 10-second time penalty will lose the place to Chiena as a minimum here. Chiena in P12 in the end. It's going to then be, I believe, what will be Sidor in P13 and Velkoski in P14 as he makes his way through. He's the last of our drivers on that lead lap as far as I'm aware, and then it will be the case that Brandon Warren completes our top 15, finishing a lap down in P15, but Velkoski completing a 41st lap of the circuit. A great drive from the back to motion driver. What a brilliant race, ladies and gentlemen, but in the end it all came down to one driver keeping his cool despite a difficult qualifying position, and we're going to hear all about it very shortly in the post-race podium interviews. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's kick off our post-race podium interviews. And as always, we start off with our race winner, and that is the number 26 driver of Harry Phillips. Hello, Harry, can you hear me?
Hi, Paul.
Harry, congratulations on being our first repeat winner in the series. How's it feel to have taken the win at Monza?
Well, firstly, I have to say, what a race. What even happened there? I can't believe it. I was aiming for a top 10 at finish. I was really not good at this track. To come home first, yeah, that's massively unexpected. I don't even have words, to be honest.
Well, it's absolutely brilliant to hear your shock surprise. I think we did have a number of incidents come the opening couple of laps, particularly the contact between Faulkner and what was Prendergast at the time, and also a little bit later on contact between Mésa and also Prendergast, which may have factored all into that. But just taking a step back, of course, starting on the third row, you had alongside you the newcomer of Gaz Williams, also in the Bentley, and you're in effectively a midfield position to start with, or at least at Monza Turn 1 it's a midfield position. Just take us through that opening lap of what was going through your head.
I took a very last-minute strategy change. I was dead scared, if I'm honest. If you're not at the front at Monza, you're more than likely to die or get into some sort of incident. But today it seemed to be the other way around. First place, second place got into incident, and I managed to get 3 wide on the straight down, and backed off a little bit. Managed to make my way around the incident. Yeah, that first lap, all I cared about was just getting as many positions as possible. If it wasn't for that incident and also the penalty to Mésa, I don't think it would have turned out the way it did. No way. But it just all fell into place for me today.
And winding things all the way back to before the race, particularly in the qualifying session, I think there was a little bit of a joke between yourself and Andres with regards to if the Bentley ended up on pole. Just take us through that for the viewers.
Yeah, so Andres was pretty confident I was going to be quick at Monza, and we had a little bit of banter in the Discord. I was telling the truth when I said I literally could not, no way, put this big boat on pole at Monza. There was no way it was going to happen. And I made a bet with Mésa to say, if that did happen, I would personally buy him a CDA setup bundle of his choice. And thankfully today, my prediction came true. Could barely scrape third row. It was really close today. The top 4, honestly, the pace on them is insane.
And then coming away from qualifying and back to the race, and really jumping back into that moment when you did take the lead, what was going through your mind? Because you were saying about having to play what was the change of strategy, but the safe strategy in the end. What was going through your mind throughout the race distance? It looked as though for a long time you seemed to be in this lonely place of, am I still going to be leading come the end of the pit stops? Am I not going to be leading? And particularly when Andres Mésa came out 5 seconds behind you from his pit stop, just what was going through your mind throughout that whole strategic phase?
Yeah, so up until the point Mésa came out of the pits, I was expecting either P2 or P3 when the rest of the cars had taken their pit stops, because I did take it quite early, a little bit over halfway through the race, I think. That was just for fuel, nothing else, didn't take tyres or anything. Yeah, when I took first place, I wasn't sure how hard Prendergast was going to fight. I thought he might have been a bit demotivated with that 15-second penalty. That was a big slap on the wrist, that was. So I think he made a bit of a mistake going through the fast chicane in the last sector, and I just managed to scrape by, I think. And from then on, it was just head down, get as fast as I could, the fastest laps that I could. I think I managed to get fastest lap of the race, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, up until Mésa, when Mésa came out of that pit box and I was still ahead by 5 seconds, that was it. I was trying my absolute hardest to keep that position. I was driving as fast as I could on those worn tyres.
And towards the end, we saw that Mésa was gradually reeling the gap in on yourself. Was it the case that you were managing the gap, or was it one of those situations where you're just watching the clock counting down and thinking, right, I've only got a couple more laps to go, the gap doesn't need to close too much more?
Exactly that. I mean, Mésa's... honestly, I didn't think the Aston could be so fast at Monza, to be honest. But he proved me wrong there. Yeah, every 2 minutes or every lap, I looked at that clock, I looked at that gap behind, and I was trying to do the calculations in my head, saying, "Is this even possible? Would I be able to fight this, or will I just come home at P1 with no fight?" It wasn't until the last lap I had a bit of a sigh of relief, and I still had about 2 seconds or a bit more on the last lap that I thought, okay, unless I do something silly, this is it. I think I've got it.
And now that you've got it and you've secured it, we look ahead, of course, to Silverstone in a week's time. What's the forecast in your mind for the return to another British circuit?
Well, after my last forecast, I don't know if I should say, but again, Silverstone, whilst the car, the Bentley, is really, really good at that track, I've never been particularly fast, but I'm hoping to get a podium in Silverstone. Just gonna hope the boat carries me to a podium, because I know for a fact that Monza tends to be much closer in terms of racing, because everyone loves Monza, except for me, it seems. The racing is just much tighter in Monza. I feel like maybe it could be a similar story for Silverstone, but I'm just hoping for a podium. If I get a win again, I'll be thrilled.
And I do have to ask, now that we've come to the end of the first half of the season, that result, I believe, will place you, unless I'm very much mistaken, right back next to Mésa in terms of points. What are your thoughts going into the second half in general in terms of that battle for the Championship League? Because you two now will have a good amount of points between yourselves and the rest of the field.
I'm thinking, I've got my eyes on Alton Park, if I'm honest. I know for a fact I'm quite strong there. I'm hoping to get a win. I'm hoping within the next 2 or 3 rounds I could probably flip this championship around and get myself on top. But Andres is really, really fast. It'll be really hard to do.
Well, of course, we wish you and also the other drivers the best of luck, but congratulations once again on the win today and being our first repeat winner in the series, and we look forward to seeing you at Silverstone in a week's time and where the Bentley can come home then.
Cheers, Paul. Can't wait for next week. See you then.
Take care. Well, Harry Phillips there, we heard from our race winner, who I think quite a bit of shock in his mind with regards to picking up the win, but also at the same time, I think a bit of relief, because he may have been thinking in his mind he wasn't able to bring home the win at Brands Hatch, but he was able to turn it around here today and just stay out of trouble. And you could hear there in the end with regards to the change of strategy, pitting just after the halfway mark and just having to manage the car home in the end, with Andres Mésa closing up rather rapidly. But we now go from our race winner to our second place man of Andres Mésa. Let's have a chat with the Spaniard and hear his thoughts. Hello Andres, can you hear me?
Yes, Paul, hi. Loud and clear.
Andres, a bit of a difficult race out there, particularly at the start, but P2 in the end. How do you feel with second place today at Monza?
I'm not very happy, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. Yeah.
Understandable, given the fact that you did have a lot of pace out there, but just taking us back to qualifying firstly, it was a good qualifying lap from yourself, put you right up there?
Yeah, it was, maybe I could have got maybe a 10th on that lap, but yeah, couldn't.
And then have to... Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, couldn't quite put everything together. Lap together, sorry.
That's no problem. And then coming into the race, it looked as though things were going relatively well for yourself. Your teammate, of course, not having the best of starts into turn 2 because the contact between, I think it was Faulkner and Prendergast at the time. But then when you came up to the pass on Prendergast, just take us through what happened at Parabolica.
I'm not sure. I'm guessing the 5-second penalty is from that incident, isn't it?
Yes, as I've been reported, it was due to door-to-door contact, which knocked Prendergast slightly wide.
I think that's a bit harsh. To me, it felt just like the slideless of the contacts. I don't know what happened really.
Then after the contacts, and knowing you had the 5-second penalty, did it change your approach to the race at all? Did you stay with the same strategy?
Pretty much the same. I was losing a bit of pressure. That's why I went into the pits a bit earlier than expected.
Was definitely a solid drive from yourself. And when you came out the pits and you saw that the gap between yourself and Harry Phillips was 5 seconds, you went to work on closing it down, because that was the 5 seconds really with that penalty. In the end, you pushed very hard to close down that gap. Just take us through that sort of final half of the race for yourself in terms of trying to close that gap down.
Yeah, I was just trying to put some pressure on Harry, and maybe with the lapped cars, something could have happened. But that's all.
Well, on the plus side, ending the first half of the season, you're our championship leader, and we're going to Silverstone next for the start of the second half of the season in a week's time. How do you feel, given the first half of the season is now complete and we go into that second half? Are you feeling confident for Silverstone and the races ahead?
Yeah, I like Silverstone. It's always great racing there. It's a lovely track. Yeah, should be a good race.
And as for the championship yourself, while you did not win tonight, I should say, you're still our championship leader by a small number of points. How do you feel with that momentum you have in your favour at this time?
I mean, it's good. I'm still leading, but yeah, I've got the feeling it could have got a bit better for me. Yeah, tonight at least.
Understandable. Well, we look forward to seeing you back out on circuit in a week's time, but until then, congratulations on the P2. Appreciate it wasn't what you were perhaps hoping for, but still upwards and onwards.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Take care. Well, hearing there from Andres Mésa, you can hear the fact that I think it's one of those instances where he's ruined what could have been a stronger result. And perhaps looking back, given time, obviously we're talking to him fresh out the cockpit effectively, so you can imagine he's going through a number of emotions right now. As indeed many of our drivers are, some will be more elated than others. So he just needs some time, I think, to process that race, but I'm sure he's going to come back in the second half of the season. But it's a difficult one to stomach, particularly when he perhaps felt that he was on course to get a very strong result, i.e. the win, and be able to expand the gap over Phillips in the championship. But still, 4 more races to go. Anything can happen in the remaining half of the season. But now we go from our second place man to our third place man, and that is Ralf Pieringer. Let's hear from the number 405 driver. Hello Ralf, can you hear me?
Hello, yes.
Ralf, P3 today at Monza. How do you feel with third place?
Yeah, thanks first. I didn't have the time or had the time to prepare for the race today, as we had to qualify for the Simgate Endurance Championship. So I was very busy with that at Imola, and yeah, my hopes weren't that big. I just look forward to have a clean race. The setup work, was there, but it wasn't enough to have the best car in the grid. And so qualifying went well, but I could have done better by maybe 2/10, and so maybe there could have been a possibility to have P5, but in the end it was P7. Then the start went quite well. I gained 3 positions and then was on the 4th place. And then I just drove my laps continuously with a decent speed, not that speed and not that pace of the 2 guys in front, but fast enough to stay in P4. Then I saw Kieran had a penalty, and Andres as well for the start crash, I think. And 15 seconds for Kieran were the chance for me to get the podium, and that was everything I could have wanted for today. And so I'm very glad to have P3 with I for that I hadn't time to prepare. It's very, very, very good for us and for me to have P3 with here in Monza.
Well, that's great to hear, and I do have to ask, with the fact that you started in a reasonable position, had that great start, of course, and gained the 3 places, as you say, and gained the time where other drivers had the penalties, you were in a very close battle, particularly before the pit stops, with Gaz Williams, who was on his debut today. Just take us through the dynamic in that battle between yourself and the Bentley drivers. You two were very close towards the end of your first stint.
Yeah, he was near me, but I think he was never in the position to attack me, and so I was quite chilled with this situation. In the end, there were the overlapped cars that sometimes help you and sometimes they cost you time. But for me, I think the lap cars weren't a problem today, and so it wasn't that much of a fight. But I have to say, for a debut, it's very good to get a P4 today, and yeah, I think he did quite well. But yeah, it wasn't a fight for me, but I saw him coming, and I saw that he was a little bit faster. But in the end, I could manage to stay in front of him.
And definitely, it was a brilliant drive for yourself to stay in front. And I can see in the YouTube chat right now, we've got your teammate Max Maliar, who's tuning in for your interview. Have you got any words with regards to Max's performance today to come from P21 to P11?
Yeah, that's a very, very big achievement for him and for us. It's important to that we develop us and the car in the simulation. As I drove the Audi quite much in the past time, and now we have to get going with the M6. He had very poor starts in the first 3 races. But no, he didn't compete in the last race, on the first 2 races, and so it's very important for him to get nearly a top 10 result, and in the end it helps us to learn the car, to get together as a team, and I think that we will achieve more good results in the future, but we have to learn and we have to understand the car, and yeah, well, I think we will get competitive with the setup as well, but it takes a little bit of time.
So coming away from the team, back to yourself, we've ended the first half of the season, and I believe after tonight you'll be 3rd place in the championship, going to Silverstone in a week's time. How do you feel about the first half of the season and the race that lies ahead in a week's time?
Yeah, the first half was good. To start with P2 in Donington was a very great feeling, and then there were the races that just went as normally. So with P6 and P7, the wasn't that good in the rain then, and in the other race it just was P6 in the end. So I think it's good for me a good start and a good first half in this season, and for us and for me it's the preparation time for something bigger. I think in 2022 we'll try to drive more races and get more competitive, and so it's a good beginning for our journey in Assetto Corsa Competizione with the M6. I think with the M6 we have a car that has potential, but it has its downsides, and so we'll have to do the best that we can. And I think for these 4 races it's okay to have to be always in the top 10 and to have podium results as well.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. And then looking specifically at Silverstone next week, a circuit that you like, or perhaps a circuit where you're not expecting to do as well?
Yeah, Silverstone, I had okay races in Silverstone. The last was 2 rainy races in an earlier championship, and they went quite well with, I think, P1 and P2. That was the time before I went to Jochen Schweizer. So I think it can be good races, but we have to see where we can get to with the M6, as we have very much Ferraris and McLarens in this season, and they are more competitive on tracks with more corners, and so I don't know where we will stay with the M6. I don't know if I can achieve a podium then, but I would say Silverstone is okay, but I prefer tracks like Monza or Spa or the Nürburgring much more. But yeah, it's in the calendar, and so we will see what we can achieve there.
Well, congratulations once again on the 3rd place, and we look forward to seeing you at the Silverstone circuit. But until then, thank you for joining us for the interview, and well done once again.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Well, hearing from Ralf Piringer there, very happy with how things have gone, and another great result to add to his first podium at the season opener at Donington, and really pleased with what he and the team have been able to achieve, and also his teammate with that P11 there. The results seem to be coming in for the Oculus powered by BMW team. But indeed, all of our interviewees for the podium, very different perspectives. Harry Phillips with the sort of shock perspective, Andres Mésa with ruin what could have been, and Piringer there with another positive, uplifting message for the team. And that brings us to a conclusion with our post-race podium interviews. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check out our official racing website? That is nextgenracing.co.uk, nextgenracing.co.uk. And we've also got our official Facebook group, of course, which is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our partners. That is the SimGrid. If you want to check them out, that's the simgrid.com, and Coach Dave Academy. That's coachdavacademy.com, without whom running this would not be possible, whether it be the prizes, the organisation, the stewarding. Without these guys, we'd not be able to bring you the awesome series that we do have here today. But next time, as we mentioned in the interviews, we will be heading back to the United Kingdom for the Silverstone circuit, a circuit which is all about downforce and apex speed. It's going to be very different from Monza, and you can be sure that our drivers are going to be ready and raring to get underway with the second half of the season. And will it be the case that we are going to see the fight back from Mésa in round number 5 at the British circuit? You'll have to tune in and find out. But until then, it's goodbye from me. I've been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Bit. We've been Next Gen Racing. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.